Good day, lovely viewers. Welcome to Harry FLAX. We have an exciting story lined up for you today. What if Harry collapsed at Gringotts age 8 and Goblins found 47 memory charms Dumbledore used to erase his real identity? Your engagement means the world to us. Like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow and bring you more amazing content. Without wasting any time, let's start. Chapter 1, The Collapse. Harry ran. The thunder of footsteps behind him grew louder as Dudley and his friends closed in. His heart slammed against his ribs, lungs burning with each desperate breath. "We're gonna get you, freak." Dudley's voice echoed through the alleyway. Harry darted between two dumpsters, his two large shoes slapping against wet pavement. A dead end loomed ahead, brick wall, no escape. Panic surged through his small body. "No, no, no," Harry whispered. He spun around, back pressed against rough brick as 5 hulking figures blocked the only exit. Dudley cracked his knuckles, pig-like eyes gleaming with anticipation. Nowhere to run now. Harry closed his eyes, wishing with every fiber of his being to be somewhere, anywhere, else. The familiar pressure built behind his eyes, that strange tingling sensation that always preceded unexplainable things. A rushing sound filled his ears. "What the?" Dudley's voice cut off abruptly. The ground vanished beneath Harry's feet. His stomach lurched as invisible hands seemed to compress him from all sides, squeezing him through a tube impossibly small. For one terrifying moment, Harry couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then, solid ground. Harry collapsed onto cold cobblestones, gasping for air. His glasses hung crooked on his face, one lens cracked. He pushed them up with trembling fingers and froze. This wasn't the alley behind Magnolia Crescent. This wasn't even Little Whinging. Crooked buildings in impossible shapes loomed over a winding street packed with people wearing. Were those robes? A woman walked past carrying a cage with something that looked suspiciously like a miniature dragon. An old man argued with a shopkeeper over the price of something called beetle eyes. "Excuse me, young man. You're blocking the way." A stern voice cut through Harry's shock. He scrambled to his feet, backing against a nearby wall. "Sorry," he mumbled. "I don't. Where am I?" The witch, because she had to be a witch with that pointed hat and wand, gave him an odd look. "Diagon Alley, of course. Are you lost, dear?" Harry's mind raced. Diagon Alley. The name tugged at something deep in his memory, something important he couldn't quite grasp. "I'm fine," he lied automatically, the response drilled into him by the Dursleys. "Never cause trouble. Never draw attention." The witch frowned, looking more closely at his oversized clothes and the lightning scar just visible beneath his messy hair. Her eyes widened. "Are you?" Harry didn't wait for her to finish. He slipped into the crowd, heart pounding. Everywhere he looked, impossible things caught his eye: shops selling cauldrons, broomsticks hovering in display windows, owls swooping between buildings carrying packages. Magic. Real magic. A strange pull tugged at Harry's awareness, like a hook behind his navel drawing him forward. Without conscious thought, his feet carried him deeper into the alley. The crowd thinned as he moved away from the main thoroughfare, the shops becoming grander, more imposing. And then he saw it, a massive white marble building towering over everything else. Steps led up to burnished bronze doors flanked by, were those goblins? Short, fierce-looking creatures with clever eyes and sharp teeth. Harry's feet kept moving, the pull now almost painful in its intensity. Gringotts Wizarding Bank, read the sign above the doors. As Harry approached, one of the goblins gave him a suspicious glare. "Business?" the creature growled. I'm not sure," Harry admitted. The tugging sensation intensified, almost desperate now. "I just feel like I need to be here." The goblin's eyes narrowed further, but he made no move to stop Harry as he climbed the steps and passed through the bronze doors. A second set of doors, silver this time, bore an engraved warning, "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed." Harry barely registered the words as he passed into a vast marble hall. Goblins weighed coins, examined jewels, and scratched in ledgers behind a long counter. Wizards and witches conducted business, their voices echoing slightly in the cavernous space. The moment Harry's feet touched the marble floor, something changed. The air seemed to thicken around him. A faint golden glow emanated from beneath his skin, visible only to him. The tug transformed into a full-body resonance, like standing inside a bell as it rang. "What's happening to me?" he whispered. A goblin looked up from his ledger, eyes widening at the sight of Harry. He said something sharp in a language Harry didn't understand, and suddenly several goblins were staring at him. The floor tilted beneath Harry's feet. The golden glow intensified, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. He took one stumbling step forward before his legs gave out entirely. The last thing Harry saw before consciousness fled was a circle of goblin faces looking down at him with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright alarm. "The boy is dying." The harsh voice cut through the darkness surrounding Harry's consciousness. He felt weightless, disconnected from his body. Not dying. Fighting. This voice was deeper, authoritative. "Look at his magic. I've never seen anything like it. 47 separate memory charms, Director Ragnarok. The most complex network I've ever encountered. And that's just the beginning of what's been done to him." Harry tried to open his eyes, but his body refused to obey. He floated in darkness, aware but unable to move. Who would do such a thing to a child? The authoritative voice, Ragnarok, sounded genuinely angry. "The magical signature is consistent throughout. Albus Dumbledore." A growl that sounded barely human. The chief warlock himself. Interesting. Harry felt something cool press against his forehead, followed by a sharp jab of pain. He wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. "Look at this, Director. The boy's magical core, it's bound. Severely bound. I estimate he's accessing less than 20% of his natural power. Can you break the bindings?" "Not safely, not all at once. The memory charms are layered in a complicated defensive matrix. If we break the wrong one first, it could trigger cascading mental collapse. Then break them carefully, Blood Fawn. This boy is important. I can feel ancient family magic activating. He is not what he appears." Harry felt another cool touch, this time against his chest, directly over his heart. A sensation like ice spreading through his veins followed, then blessed numbness. "I've stabilized him for now. The first memory charm is the newest, placed approximately 6 months ago. I can remove that one safely." "Proceed." A strange pressure built inside Harry's head, like a balloon expanding behind his eyes. Then, with a sensation like glass shattering, the pressure released. Memory flooded in, vivid, overwhelming. Standing in Mrs. Figg's living room. An old man with a long silver beard and twinkling blue eyes behind half-moon spectacles knelt before him. "Hello, Harry. Do you remember me? I'm Professor Dumbledore." Harry nodded cautiously. "You came last year too. And the year before." The old man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, I did. I just need to check something again. Look at me, please." A wand raised, pointing directly between Harry's eyes. "This won't hurt." But it did hurt, as memories of strange books found in the school library disappeared, as questions about his parents faded, as the name, Sirius, slipped away. Harry gasped, eyes flying open. He tried to sit up but found himself restrained by some invisible force. "Easy, young wizard." The goblin leaning over him had shrewd eyes and a face lined with age. "The first memory block has been removed. There will be disorientation." Harry blinked, trying to make sense of his surroundings. He lay on a stone table in a chamber lit by floating orbs of blue light. Runes carved into the ceiling pulsed with energy. 3 goblins surrounded him, one wearing elaborate armor decorated with gemstones, one in a healer's robe, and one taking notes on a piece of parchment. "Who are you?" Harry managed. "Where am I?" The goblin in armor stepped forward. "I am Director Ragnarok, leader of the Gringotts horde. You collapsed in our main hall 1 hour ago, triggering ancient family magic wards. We brought you to our healing chambers." Harry's mind raced. "Dumbledore, he's been doing something to me. Making me forget things." Ragnarok's eyes narrowed. "Yes. Extensive memory manipulation, power bindings, and more we have yet to discover. The question is why?" The healer goblin, Blood Fong, Harry assumed, ran a claw-like finger along a parchment covered in glowing symbols. "Shall we continue with the next charm, Director? It was placed approximately 1 year ago." "Wait," Harry said, panic rising. "Will it hurt?" Blood Fong fixed him with an unblinking stare. "Yes." "Blood Fong." Ragnarok growled. "Have some tact." He turned to Harry. "Young wizard, I will not lie to you. Breaking memory charms is painful. However, leaving them in place is more dangerous. Something powerful is happening with your magic, fighting against these bindings. If left unchecked, the conflict could tear your mind apart." Harry swallowed hard. "Then do it. Break the next one." Blood Fong placed a cold metal instrument against Harry's temple. "Brace yourself." Pain exploded behind Harry's eyes, white-hot and searing. He might have screamed, he couldn't tell through the roaring in his ears. Then another memory crashed into his consciousness. Standing in the Dursleys' back garden. Moonlight illuminated the tall figure of Albus Dumbledore. "What are you doing here?" Harry asked, confused why the strange man from last year had returned. "Checking on you, my boy. I understand you've been asking questions at school about magic." Harry nodded eagerly. "I made a book float yesterday when Dudley tried to rip it. And I found books about wizards and witches. Are they real? Am I? Look at me, Harry." The wand raised. Obliviate. Questions about magic disappeared. Instances of accidental magic reframed themselves as coincidences or tricks of the light. Harry gasped as the memory solidified. "He's been erasing every time I discovered magic. Why would he do that?" Ragnarok and Blood Fong exchanged glances. "We intend to find out," Ragnarok said grimly. "But first, we need to know who you really are." The third goblin stepped forward, holding a ceremonial dagger and a piece of parchment. "An inheritance test will reveal your true bloodlines and any assets or titles you may claim. 3 drops of blood on this parchment." Harry hesitated. "Will it?" "Yes, it will hurt," Blood Fong interrupted impatiently. "Everything worthwhile hurts, wizard child." Despite everything, Harry felt a smile tug at his lips. At least the goblin was honest. He held out his hand, and the third goblin pricked his finger with surprising gentleness. 3 drops of blood fell onto the parchment and immediately began to spread, forming words and symbols. Ragnarok leaned forward, eyes widening as he read. "By the Founder's gold." "What? What does it say?" Harry tried to sit up again, and this time the invisible restraints allowed it. "You are not merely Harry Potter, heir to House Potter," Ragnarok said slowly. "You carry the blood of multiple ancient houses. Peveril. Black. And, this can't be possible." "What?" Harry demanded, the golden glow beneath his skin pulsing brighter. "There appears to be a connection to Gryffindor himself." Ragnarok looked genuinely shocked. "No wonder Dumbledore sought to control you. The political and magical power you could wield." Harry's head spun. "I don't understand any of this. I'm just Harry." "No," Blood Fong said, a hint of something like respect entering his voice. "You are much more. And someone has gone to extraordinary lengths to make you forget that fact. The third goblin handed the parchment to Harry. Names and dates branched out in a complex family tree, properties and vault numbers listed in neat columns. At the top, in bold letters, Hadrian James Potter Black heir apparent, most ancient and noble house of Potter heir apparent, most ancient and noble house of Black heir apparent, most ancient house of Peveril blood claimant, founders house of Gryffindor, Hadrian. Harry whispered. My name isn't even Harry. A diminutive used to make you seem smaller, less significant, Ragnar growled. Another manipulation. Harry stared at the parchment, emotions warring within him. Anger. Confusion. A strange sense of validation, that he'd always known, somehow, that he was meant for more than cupboards and cast-offs. Break the next one, he said, voice steadier. I want to remember who I really am. Bloodfang nodded approvingly. This one is from 2 years ago. Deeper, more complex. The pain will be significant. Harry lay back on the stone table. Do it. Meanwhile, in a tower office far to the north, delicate silver instruments on Albus Dumbledore's desk began to emit high-pitched whines. One after another, they spun faster, glowed red, then collapsed in on themselves. Dumbledore looked up from the parchment work he'd been reviewing, alarm spreading across his features. He rose swiftly, moving to examine the ruined devices. No, he whispered. Impossible. The monitoring charms tied to Harry Potter's magical signature were failing, not gradually, as they might if the boy were dying, but catastrophically, as if being systematically dismantled. Another instrument, this one tracking the blood wards at Privet Drive, gave a final whirring protest before melting into silver goo on his desk. Dumbledore's normally twinkling eyes hardened to chips of blue ice. He strode to his fireplace, throwing in a handful of Flo powder. Arabella Fig, he called sharply. After a moment, a confused face appeared in the green flames. Headmaster. Is something wrong? Check on the boy. Immediately. Tell me exactly where he is and what he's doing. The squib's face disappeared from the flames. Dumbledore paced, mind racing through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had Death Eaters somehow found Harry? Had the boy's accidental magic spiraled out of control? 5 excruciating minutes later, Arabella's face reappeared, panicked. He's gone. The Dursleys say he ran from his cousin hours ago and never came back. They're quite angry about dinner not being prepared. Dumbledore's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped his wand. Thank you, Arabella. Alert me the moment he returns. He ended the Flo call and moved to his desk, pulling out a special parchment linked to the Order of the Phoenix from the war years. His quill scratched rapidly across its surface. Emergency. Harry Potter missing from Privet Drive. All available members search Diagon Alley, Hogsmeade, and magical districts. Approach with caution, possible abduction. Do not alert Ministry. Report directly to me. The parchment glowed briefly before the message disappeared, transmitted to the enchanted copies held by former Order members. Dumbledore sat heavily in his chair, looking suddenly older. What have you done now, Harry? He murmured. And who has found you? Back in Gringotts, Harry lay panting on the stone table, tears streaming from his eyes. 3 more memory charms had been broken in quick succession, each more painful than the last. With each broken charm, more of the puzzle pieces fell into place. He killed them, Harry gasped. Voldemort killed my parents. But Sirius wasn't the one who betrayed them, it was Pettigrew. Sirius is my godfather. And Dumbledore knew, he had to know Sirius was innocent. Ragnar nodded grimly. The wizard Dumbledore sits on the Wizengamot. He could have demanded a trial for Black at any time. Why? Harry demanded, struggling to sit up again. Why would Dumbledore want my godfather in prison? Control, Bloodfang said simply, preparing his instruments for the next memory charm. With Black imprisoned, Dumbledore could place you wherever he wished. The parchment shows your parents' will was sealed on his authority. Harry felt sick. The Dursleys. He put me with people who hate magic. People who would ensure you arrived at Hogwarts desperate for acceptance, with no knowledge of your heritage or status, Ragnarok added. Malleable. Grateful to whoever rescued you from that life. Dumbledore, Harry whispered. The golden glow beneath his skin pulsed brighter, tiny arcs of energy crackling between his fingers. He planned to be my savior. Indeed. Ragnarok gestured to the parchment still clutched in Harry's hand. Your true heritage makes you politically powerful. The last heir to multiple ancient houses would be beyond Dumbledore's direct control unless I didn't know about it, Harry finished. Unless I trusted him completely. Precisely, Bloodfong said. Are you ready for the next memory charm? This one appears to be tied to knowledge of your family vaults. Harry's jaw set. Do it. The pain was becoming more familiar now, almost expected. As Bloodfong worked, Harry's thoughts raced. Each broken charm revealed more manipulation, more lies. Years of being told his parents were worthless drunks, when in reality they were magical nobility. Years of being told he was a burden, when vaults full of gold sat waiting for him. The memory rushed in, visiting Gringotts at age 6 with Mrs. Fig after he'd asked persistent questions about whether his parents had left him anything. Dumbledore appearing suddenly, modifying not just Harry's memory but Mrs. Fig's as well, ensuring Harry would never think to ask about inheritances again. 7 charms broken, Bloodfong announced, stepping back to consult his notes. 40 remaining. We've only scratched the surface. Harry sat up fully, the invisible restraints now completely gone. His head pounded, but his mind felt clearer than it had in years. How long will it take to remove them all? Days. Perhaps weeks, Bloodfong admitted. Some are layered so deeply they've become entwined with your natural memories. Those will require careful extraction. Ragnarok stepped forward. Young heir, we face a problem. By now, Dumbledore surely knows you're missing from your relatives. The word dripped with disdain. He will be searching. Gringotts can offer sanctuary under Goblin law, but we must establish formal grounds. What do you mean? Harry asked. A claim of magical guardianship abuse, Ragnarok explained. With evidence of unauthorized memory charms and power bindings, we can invoke protective custody while investigations proceed. This would prevent Dumbledore from legally forcing your return. Do it, Harry said immediately. What do you need from me? Your consent to a deeper examination, Bloodfong said. I must document each charm and binding for evidence. It will be unpleasant. Harry almost laughed. More unpleasant than having my entire identity erased. Then living in a cupboard for 7 years. Then believing I was unwanted and worthless. The goblins exchanged glances. You have spirit, Heir Potter Black, Ragnarok said with something like approval. We will prepare the necessary documentation. In the meantime, a sharp knock interrupted him. A younger goblin entered, bowing. Director, there are wizards in the main hall asking about a boy matching the heir's description. One claims to be acting on Dumbledore's authority. Ragnarok bared his teeth in what might have been a smile on a human but looked decidedly predatory on a goblin. Inform them that Gringotts has no knowledge of any lost children today. Then activate Security Protocol 3. The messenger goblin's eyes widened, but he bowed and hurried out. What's Protocol 3? Harry asked. We move you deeper into Gringotts territory where wizard law has no reach, Ragnarok said. Can you stand? Harry slid from the table, legs wobbling slightly. The golden glow still pulsed beneath his skin, but it seemed to be stabilizing, becoming less erratic. I think so. Good. Ragnarok gestured, and a section of wall slid away, revealing a narrow passage. Bloodfong will continue your treatment below. I will handle the legal proceedings and investigation. Harry paused. Why are you helping me? I thought goblins and wizards didn't exactly get along. Ragnar's expression turned serious. 3 reasons, young heir. First, what was done to you violates our most sacred financial laws. No one may interfere with a rightful heir's access to their vaults. Second, the House of Potter has historically treated goblin kind with respect, unlike most wizard families. And the third reason? Ragnar smiled, showing pointed teeth. Anything that disrupts Albus Dumbledore's careful plans interests us greatly. The man has blocked goblin rights legislation for decades. Harry found himself smiling back. Then I'm very glad I collapsed in your bank, Director Ragnar. As are we, Heir Potter Black. Ragnar bowed slightly. Now go. The next few days will reshape your understanding of everything you thought you knew. Be brave. Harry nodded, following Bloodfong into the passage. As the walls sealed behind them, he felt an unexpected surge of excitement cutting through the fear and confusion. For the first time in his life, he was walking toward the truth instead of away from it. And whatever that truth turned out to be, he would face it, not as the frightened boy in the cupboard, but as Hadrian James Potter Black, heir to ancient magical legacies. Behind them, in the chamber they'd vacated, Ragnar turned to the third goblin. Prepare the inheritance ritual chamber. When the boy is ready, we'll need to confirm the Gryffindor connection. If true, it changes everything, the goblin agreed. The prophecies speak of an heir of 2 houses uniting the old magic. Indeed. Ragnar's eyes gleamed. And with 40 more memory charms to break, who knows what other secrets we'll uncover. Dumbledore went to extraordinary lengths to reshape this boy. We must discover why. The goblin bowed and hurried away, leaving Ragnar alone with his thoughts. The director moved to a communications panel on the wall, pressing a series of runes. Sharp Claw, he said when a face appeared, access the Potter and Black vaults. Look for wills, journals, anything that might explain Dumbledore's interest in the heir. And place the highest security on all information regarding today's events. He paused. The game has changed. We have the boy who lived, and Dumbledore will burn the world to get him back. Harry followed Bloodfong down a series of increasingly narrow passages. They descended rapidly, the air growing cooler and heavier with magic. Occasionally they passed goblin guards who nodded respectfully to Bloodfong while eyeing Harry with suspicious curiosity. How far down does Gringotts go? Harry asked, trying to distract himself from the pounding headache and the occasional crackling of magic across his skin. Hundreds of levels, Bloodfong replied without slowing. The bank you wizards see is merely the surface. Below lie our cities, forges, training grounds, and the oldest vaults. I had no idea, Harry marveled. That is precisely the point, young heir. Bloodfong stopped before an ornate door covered in runes. These will be your quarters during treatment. They are connected to a healing chamber where we will continue removing the charms. The door swung open to reveal a surprisingly comfortable suite. Though carved from stone like everything else in Gringotts, the rooms featured plush furniture scaled for humans rather than goblins, a 4-poster bed with emerald hangings, and enchanted windows showing various landscapes despite being underground. This is amazing, Harry said, turning slowly to take it all in. These chambers were designed for important wizard guests during the Goblin Alliance of 1752, Bloodfong explained. Few remember the Alliance now, another piece of history Dumbledore's educational reforms have erased from Hogwarts' curriculum. Harry moved to one of the enchanted windows, currently showing a view of what appeared to be a vast underground cavern lit by phosphorescent crystals. Is that real? Somewhere in Gringotts? The Goblin Residential District, Bloodfong confirmed. You may adjust the view if you wish. Harry shook his head, fascinated by the glimpse into goblin life. I like this one. He turned back to the healer. What happens now? Bloodfong gestured to a side door. Through there is the healing chamber. You should rest first, eat something. Breaking memory charms depletes magical energy. As if on cue, Harry's stomach growled loudly. He realized he hadn't eaten since a meager breakfast at the Dursleys'. Food would be good. Bloodfong touched a rune on the wall. Almost immediately, a younger goblin appeared with a tray loaded with more food than Harry had ever seen at once: roast meat, several kinds of bread, fruits, and a steaming goblet of something that smelled like hot chocolate but with unfamiliar spices. "Thank you," Harry said to the server, who looked startled at being addressed directly by a wizard. After the server departed, Bloodfong pointed to the goblet. "Drink that first. Restorative potion with nutrients and magical stabilizers. It will help with the headache." Harry sipped cautiously, then more eagerly as the warm liquid spread through him, easing the pain behind his eyes and settling the crackling energy beneath his skin. "That's brilliant. Goblin healing methods are superior to wizard magic in many ways," Bloodfong said matter-of-factly. "Eat now. I will return in 1 hour to continue treatment." As the healer turned to leave, Harry called after him. "Bloodfong. Thank you. For helping me remember who I am." The goblin paused, studying Harry with those shrewd dark eyes. "Do not thank me yet, young heir. The memories still to come may not all be pleasant ones. Truth rarely is." After Bloodfong left, Harry attacked the food with enthusiasm. Each bite seemed to restore not just physical energy but magical strength as well. The golden glow beneath his skin stabilized further, becoming a gentle constant radiance visible only when he concentrated on it. His mind whirled with the implications of everything he'd learned. Not just Harry Potter, but heir to multiple ancient houses. Not an unwanted burden, but someone important enough that the most powerful wizard in Britain had systematically erased his identity. And Sirius, his godfather, rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit, while Dumbledore, who must have known the truth, did nothing. Anger rose in Harry, hot and unfamiliar. He'd never allowed himself to feel real anger at the Dursleys, it only made things worse. But now, knowing what had been taken from him, the emotion surged through him like wildfire. The goblet in his hand shattered suddenly, the remaining potion splashing across the table. Harry jumped back, startled. "Sorry," he said automatically, then realized he was apologizing to an empty room. He stared at his hand, at the tiny cuts where the metal had broken against his palm. Already they were healing, the skin knitting together before his eyes. "What am I?" he whispered. Before he could ponder this further, a gentle chime sounded, and the door to the suite opened. Instead of Bloodfong, Director Ragnarok entered, carrying a small wooden box. "Heir Potter Black," the director said formally. "How are you feeling after your meal?" "Better," Harry admitted. "Though I just broke your goblet." "Sorry about that." Ragnarok waved dismissively. "Your magic is destabilizing as the bindings weaken. It will settle eventually." He set the box on the table. "I've brought something that may interest you." Harry approached cautiously. "What is it?" "When a wizard or witch creates a will, a copy is automatically filed in our records. Your parents' will was sealed by the Wizengamot, by Dumbledore specifically, but the original copy remains in our archives." Ragnarok opened the box, removing a scroll sealed with red wax. "As their heir, you have the right to see it, regardless of the Ministry's seal." Harry stared at the scroll, heart pounding. His parents' last wishes, hidden from him all these years. Can I read it now?" "Of course." Ragnarok handed him the scroll. "The magical seal will recognize your blood. Simply press your thumb to the wax." Harry did so. The seal glowed briefly, then the wax melted away, allowing the parchment to unroll. Handwriting, his parents' handwriting, filled the page. Harry's vision blurred with tears as he began to read. "The last will and testament of James Charles Potter and Lily Evans Potter being of sound mind and body, we declare this our final will and testament, superseding all previous versions. To Sirius Orion Black, we leave guardianship of our son, Harry James Potter, along with 100,000 galleons to assist in his upbringing. Padfoot, raise him to be a marauder, but with his mother's heart. Should Sirius be unable to take guardianship, custody should pass to the following individuals in order: 1. Alice and Frank Longbottom. 2. Minerva McGonagall. 3. Andromeda and Ted Tonks. Under no circumstances is Harry to be placed with Petunia and Vernon Dursley. Lily's sister has expressed violent hatred toward magic and would be harmful to Harry's well-being. Harry's hands shook as he read this line. They had specifically forbidden exactly what Dumbledore had done. To Remus Lupin, we leave the cottage in Wales and 50,000 galleons. Your furry problem doesn't define you, Moony. Use the cottage during full moons and know you always have a home. To Peter Pettigrew, if you have remained faithful to the Fidelius charm as our secret keeper, we leave 50,000 galleons and our eternal gratitude. If you have betrayed us, may magic judge you accordingly. Harry gasped. It was here all along, proof that Sirius wasn't the secret keeper. Ragnarok nodded grimly. Continue. Should we die by Voldemort's hand, know that we anticipated this possibility. The protection ritual Lily discovered in the Potter Grimoire has been prepared. If successful, Harry will carry our final gift to him, a blood protection that should guard him against Voldemort and his followers. Harry, if you're reading this, know that we loved you more than life itself. The Potter and Evans journals in the family vault will explain everything. Trust in Sirius, Remus, and Professor McGonagall. And be wary of Albus Dumbledore. He knows only part of the prophecy and sees you as a weapon, not a child. All our worldly possessions, properties, investments, and family heirlooms pass to our son, Harry James Potter. Until he reaches majority, his magical guardian shall have limited access to the trust vault only, with all family vaults sealed until Harry is 11 or emancipated. Executed this 28th day of October, 1981. James Charles Potter. Lily Evans Potter. Witnessed, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Minerva McGonagall. Harry looked up from the parchment, tears streaming down his face. Dumbledore witnessed this. He knew exactly what they wanted. And he did the opposite. Yes, Ragnarok said quietly. A clear violation of magical executor duties. They mentioned a prophecy, Harry said, his mind latching onto the detail. And said Dumbledore only knows part of it. Indeed. Most interesting. Ragnarok took a seat across from Harry. The will contains enough evidence to free your godfather and challenge Dumbledore's guardianship. However, moving against someone as politically powerful as the Chief Warlock requires careful strategy. I want Sirius free, Harry said firmly. And I want away from the Dursleys. Both can be arranged, but timing is crucial. Dumbledore currently has search parties looking for you. Moving openly now would allow him to intercept and potentially reapply memory charms before we've removed the existing ones. Harry shuddered at the thought. How long before I'm fixed? Before all the charms are gone. Bloodfang estimates 2 weeks for complete removal. However, Ragnarok leaned forward, we could accelerate the process for the most critical memory blocks, enough to restore your core identity and knowledge. That would take perhaps 3 days of intensive treatment. Harry's jaw set with determination. Let's do that. The sooner I know who I really am, the sooner I can fight back. Ragnarok nodded approvingly. A warrior's answer. Very well. He rose. Bloodfang will return shortly to continue treatment. In the meantime, I suggest you read this. He pulled a small leather-bound book from inside his robes and placed it on the table. Your mother's journal from her final year. It was found in your family vault today. It may provide context for some of the memories you recover. Harry reached for the journal with trembling hands. Thank you, Director Ragnarok. Rest well, young heir. The coming days will be challenging. Ragnarok moved to the door, then paused. One more thing, your magical signature has been changing as the bindings weaken. Soon Dumbledore's tracking charms, if any remain, will no longer recognize you. When that happens, we can move more freely. After Ragnar departed, Harry curled up on the bed with his mother's journal. He traced his fingers over the cover, imagining her hands holding this same book, writing her thoughts, never knowing her son would read them years later. He opened to the first page, dated September 1980, and began to read. September 2nd, 1980. Harry is 1 month old today. James says he has my eyes, but everything else is pure Potter, especially that impossible hair. He's already showing signs of accidental magic. Yesterday his stuffed hippogriff flew across the nursery when he cried for it. Dumbledore visited again, asking more questions about the night I felt the strange magic during pregnancy. I haven't told him everything. After what happened to the Longbottom's boy, I don't trust his greater good anymore. The ancient magic I found in the Potter grimoire might be our only hope now. The prophecy weighs on us all, but I refuse to believe my beautiful boy is destined only for war. There must be another way. Harry read until his eyes grew heavy, absorbing details of a mother he couldn't remember. Her intelligence, her fierce love, her growing suspicion of Dumbledore. She mentioned research into blood protection spells, ancient Potter family magic, and something called the Awakening that seemed to concern Harry directly. He was nodding off over the journal when Bloodfong returned. The goblin healer carried several instruments Harry hadn't seen before, along with vials of potions in various colors. It is time, young heir, Bloodfong announced. The intensive treatment begins now. Are you prepared? Harry closed the journal carefully and set it aside. I'm ready. Good. We will focus on breaking the deepest, oldest memory charms first, those placed when you were an infant or toddler. These form the foundation for later manipulations. Harry followed Bloodfong into the adjoining healing chamber. Unlike the comfortable suite, this room was purely functional. A rune-inscribed stone table dominated the center, surrounded by basins of various liquids and crystals mounted on pedestals. Lie down, Bloodfong instructed. The procedure will last approximately 4 hours. You will experience disorientation, pain, and possibly hallucinations as the memories return. Harry settled onto the table, staring up at the crystal formations hanging from the ceiling. Will I still be me? After all this? Bloodfong paused in his preparations. You will be more yourself than you have ever been, young heir. The person you are now is a shadow, a sketch of your true identity. What we do here does not change who you are, it reveals it. That was strangely comforting. Harry took a deep breath. I'm ready. Bloodfong placed a golden circlet on Harry's head, then positioned crystals around him in a precise pattern. We begin with the oldest charm, placed when you were approximately 15 months old, immediately after the attack that killed your parents. The goblin began chanting in his harsh native language. The crystals glowed in sequence, creating a web of light above Harry's body. The golden glow beneath his skin responded, rising to meet the crystal light. Pain lanced through Harry's head, worse than anything he'd felt yet. He might have screamed, he wasn't sure. The world dissolved into fragments of light and shadow. Then memory crashed in like a tidal wave. A cottage in Godric's Hollow. His mother's voice, singing softly as she tucked him into his crib. His father's laugh as he created puffs of colored smoke with his wand for Harry to grab at. Later, shouting. His father's voice, suddenly urgent. Lily, take Harry, and go. It's him. Go. Run. I'll hold him off. The sound of someone stumbling from the room, a door bursting open, a cackle of high-pitched laughter. His mother, barricading the nursery door, face streaked with tears but expression determined. Placing him in the crib. Whispering words he didn't understand, complicated Latin phrases, her wand moving in intricate patterns over his heart, his head, his hands. Mummy loves you, Harry. Daddy loves you. Be safe. Be strong. The door blasting open. A tall figure in a black cloak. Red eyes. A face like a snake. Stand aside, you silly girl, stand aside now. Not Harry, please no, take me, kill me instead, this is my last warning, not Harry. Please, have mercy, have mercy. Not Harry. Not Harry. Please, I'll do anything, a high, cold laugh. A flash of green light. His mother falling. Then the red eyes turning to him, a wand raising. Avada Kedavra. Green light. Pain beyond imagining. And something else, a blackness tearing free from the cloaked figure, a portion of it slamming into Harry's forehead while the rest fled howling into the night. The house in ruins around him. Crying in his crib for hours. Then, a huge man with a wild beard, tears streaming into his tangled hair as he lifted Harry gently from the debris. Poor little tyke. Don't you worry, Harry. Hagrid's gotcha now. A flying motorcycle. The wind in his hair. Safety in massive, gentle hands. Then, Dumbledore. Cold blue eyes assessing the scar on his forehead. A wand raised. This is for the best, Harry. You mustn't remember the power you showed tonight. Not until you're ready. Not until I can guide you properly. Pain. Forgetting. The memory of what happened when Voldemort's curse rebounded fading away. Harry gasped, the memory solidifying into crystal clarity. I remember, he whispered. I remember everything. Bloodfong nodded, adjusting the crystals. The first and deepest charm is broken. Your magic is already responding, look. Harry raised his hand. The golden glow had intensified, now clearly visible even without concentration. What does it mean? It means your true power is awakening, Bloodfong said. But we have much more work to do. Prepare yourself, the next charm conceals memories from age 2 to 3. And so it continued. Hour after hour, memory after memory. Harry aged backwards through his own life, rediscovering pieces of himself Dumbledore had systematically erased. He remembered Sirius visiting him at the Dursleys in dog form, watching over him until Dumbledore discovered and stopped the visits. He remembered his first major accidental magic at age 4, temporarily banishing Vernon to the roof when his uncle raised a hand to strike him. He remembered finding a letter from his mother's friend Alice hidden in the attic, only for Dumbledore to appear that night and take both the letter and the memory. Most significantly, he remembered the awakening of abilities that terrified his relatives, speaking to garden snakes, moving objects without touching them, healing injuries overnight. Each time these abilities emerged, Dumbledore would appear within days, erasing not just Harry's memory but the Dursleys as well, ensuring the cycle of abuse and suppression continued. By the time Bloodfong announced the end of the session, Harry felt transformed. His head pounded with the effort of absorbing so many recovered memories, but his mind felt clearer, sharper, as if fog had lifted from his thoughts. 7 major memory blocks removed, Bloodfong said, checking his notes. Approximately 25% of the total. Your magical core is responding well, the bindings are weakening naturally as the memory charms break. Harry sat up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in his limbs. How long was I out? 6 hours. Longer than anticipated, but productive. Bloodfong handed him a goblet of the same spiced restorative potion. Drink. Then rest. We continue tomorrow. Thank you, Bloodfong. Harry drank deeply, feeling strength flow back into his limbs. I know you're just doing your job, but still, thank you. The goblin healer looked at him curiously. Few wizards thank goblins for anything, young heir. You are unusual. I'm beginning to realize that, Harry said quietly. Back in the suite, Harry found a meal waiting and fresh clothes laid out, simple but well-made robes in deep green with the Potter crest subtly embroidered on the breast. After eating, he picked up his mother's journal again, this time turning to the final entries. October 20th, 1981. The ritual is prepared. James thinks I'm being paranoid, but he's agreed to let me perform the blood protection ceremony tomorrow night. The old magic in the Potter grimoire is complex, but I've adapted it to work with my own bloodline. If anything happens to us, Harry will carry our protection within him. Dumbledore keeps pressing for details about the prophecy's fulfillment signs. I've told him nothing about the awakening or the inheritance magic that's already showing in Harry. Some things must remain family secrets. Sometimes I catch him looking at Harry with such calculation in his eyes. Not like a child to be protected, but a weapon to be forged. I've insisted we change secret keepers from Sirius to Peter. Dumbledore was too interested in Sirius being our secret keeper, almost eager for something to go wrong. If you're reading this someday, Harry, trust your godfather. Trust your magic. And remember that you are more than a prophecy. You are our son, and we love you beyond measure. The final entry was dated October 30th, 1981, the day before they died. Something's wrong. Peter hasn't checked in for 3 days. James is worried but trying not to show it. I've completed the protection ritual, but there's a heaviness in the air tonight. If the worst happens. I've left instructions in the main family vault. The grimoire is hidden where only Potter blood can find it. Harry, if you're reading this, the answers you seek are in the heart of Potter Manor. Follow the stag when the moon is full. I hear something outside. James is going to check. The entry ended there, leaving Harry staring at the unfinished sentence. The final words his mother had written before Voldemort arrived. He closed the journal, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of sadness this time, but of determination. His parents had prepared for the worst. They had left him tools, knowledge, protection. And Dumbledore had systematically kept him from all of it. No more, Harry whispered to the empty room. No more lies. No more manipulation. The golden glow beneath his skin pulsed in agreement, growing stronger by the hour as more of his true self emerged from beneath Dumbledore's carefully constructed prison of false identity. Tomorrow would bring more memories, more truth. And soon, very soon, he would be ready to reclaim everything that had been taken from him. For the first time in his short life, Harry fell asleep not as an unwanted burden, but as the heir to ancient houses, the child of parents who had loved him enough to die for him, the boy with a destiny of his own making. And somewhere in Scotland, Albus Dumbledore paced his office as more monitoring instruments failed, knowing that his carefully constructed plans were unraveling thread by thread. The game had changed. The pawn had left the board. Chapter 2, Shattered Illusions. 7 days after collapsing on the marble floor of Gringotts, Harry sat cross-legged on a pile of cushions in his underground chamber, surrounded by stacks of books, scrolls, and magical artifacts. The golden glow beneath his skin had stabilized into a constant, gentle radiance that illuminated the parchment in his hands even in the dim light. 39 memory charms broken, he murmured, checking off another entry in Bloodfang's meticulous log. 8 more to go. The past week had transformed him. Each shattered memory block had released not just knowledge but power, as if his magic had been stored in separate compartments that were now flowing together into a unified whole. He looked different too, slightly taller, his features sharper, his infamous scar less prominent as the magic Dumbledore had bound inside it gradually dispersed. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Harry closed the parchment, standing in one fluid motion, another change. Where before he'd been clumsy, now he moved with an unconscious grace, as if his body was remembering muscle patterns that had been locked away. "Enter," he called. Ragnarok strode into the room, followed by a goblin Harry hadn't met before who carried an ornate wooden box. "Heir Potter Black," the director greeted him formally. "You look well today." "Thanks to Bloodfang's work," Harry replied, offering the goblin greeting, right fist pressed to left shoulder, that he'd learned from the ancient tomes in his family vault. "What brings you down to the depths, director?" Ragnarok's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Harry had seen on the stern goblin's face. "2 matters of importance. First, our intelligence suggests Dumbledore has expanded his search. He's mobilized his old war network while keeping the Ministry uninformed." Harry nodded, unsurprised. He wouldn't want official questions about why I disappeared from my relatives. Precisely. Ragnock gestured to the other goblin. This is Grimclaw, our artifacts specialist. He's been examining some unusual items recovered from your family vaults. Grimclaw stepped forward, placing the wooden box on the table and opening it carefully. Inside, nestled in black velvet, lay 3 objects: a ring with a strange symbol carved into its black stone, a dagger with runes etched along its silver blade, and what appeared to be a time-worn map. The ring is a Peveril heirloom, Grimclaw explained, his voice surprisingly melodic for a goblin. One of 3 legendary objects created by the brothers Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus Peveril. Harry's eyes widened. The Deathly Hallows? From the children's story? Not merely a story, Ragnock said gravely. The Peverils created 3 powerful magical artifacts, the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility. This ring holds the Resurrection Stone. Harry stared at the ring, remembering the tale from a book he'd found in his family vault. 3 brothers who cheated death and were given powerful gifts. The stone that can recall the dead, he whispered. In a fashion, Grimclaw cautioned. It creates echoes, not true resurrection. Nevertheless, it is immensely powerful, and as the last Peveril heir, it responds to your blood. My family has an invisibility cloak too, Harry said, thinking aloud. My father's journal mentioned it being unusually powerful, never fading, never tearing. Ragnock and Grimclaw exchanged significant glances. The 3rd Hallow, Ragnock confirmed. According to our records, James Potter loaned it to Dumbledore shortly before his death. Harry's jaw tightened. Another thing he kept from me. Indeed. Grimclaw pointed to the dagger next. This is the ritual blade of House Black. It recognizes you as heir despite your Potter blood taking precedence, likely due to your grandmother Doria Black's marriage into the Potter line and Sirius Black naming you his heir. Harry picked up the dagger carefully. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, the runes along the blade glowed silver, and he felt a strange resonance with the magic inside him. The blade accepts you, Grimclaw noted with satisfaction. This will be crucial for certain inheritance rituals. And the map? Harry asked, setting the dagger down. Ah. Grimclaw's expression turned reverent. This may be the most significant find. It appears to be a map to Avalon. Harry blinked. Avalon? As in King Arthur's Avalon? The very same, Ragnock said. According to Goblin records, Godric Gryffindor was a direct descendant of Arthur Pendragon. If you truly carry Gryffindor blood, this map would explain Dumbledore's extraordinary efforts to control you. Harry sat back, mind racing. Deathly Hallows. Ritual blades. Maps to legendary magical islands. Every day brought new revelations about his heritage, each more astonishing than the last. There's more, Ragnock said, taking a seat across from Harry. Bloodfang's analysis of the remaining memory charms suggests the final block may contain knowledge of your connection to Gryffindor. It appears to be the oldest and most complex charm, placed when you were barely a year old. Can we break it today? Harry asked eagerly. Ragnock shook his head. Too dangerous. Your magical core is still stabilizing from yesterday's sessions. Attempting the final major block too soon could cause permanent damage. Harry nodded, accepting the caution. After a week of intensive treatment, he'd learned to trust the Goblins' expertise. What about my mail? Any progress tracking down what Dumbledore did with it? Significant progress, Ragnock said, his tone darkening. We've identified a redirection ward tied to your magical signature. All correspondence addressed to Harry Potter has been routed to a secure room at Hogwarts for the past 7 years. Letters from who? Harry leaned forward. Many sources. Magical children who grew up hearing stories of the boy who lived. Foreign ministries offering sanctuary after your parents' deaths. Gringotts notices regarding your accounts. And most importantly, regular status updates from your godfather. Harry's head snapped up. Sirius has been writing to me. From Azkaban. Once monthly since his imprisonment, Ragnarok confirmed. The prison allows 1 letter per month for high-security prisoners. He never missed a month. Emotion welled in Harry's chest, anger, grief, a desperate longing for connection. Can you get them? The letters? Not directly. They're within Hogwarts wards. However, Ragnarok's eyes gleamed, we're pursuing a legal avenue. As your financial custodians during this investigation, we filed for disclosure of all withheld correspondence. The Wizengamot will hear the petition tomorrow. Without revealing I'm here? Harry asked warily. Of course. The petition comes from Gringotts on behalf of a minor client whose identity remains sealed during investigation of Guardian malfeasance. Standard procedure. Harry smiled. You've thought of everything. We are goblins, Ragnarok said simply. Now, there's one more matter to address. Your magical guardian. Dumbledore, Harry spat the name. Yes. With evidence of memory manipulation and will suppression, we have grounds to petition for removal. However, a new guardian must be appointed. Harry considered this. What about Sirius? If we can prove his innocence, an excellent eventual solution, Ragnarok agreed. But the legal process will take time. In the interim, you need protection from Dumbledore's influence. Who, then? There is an unusual option. Ragnarok looked slightly uncomfortable. Goblin guardianship. Harry's eyebrows shot up. That's possible. Unprecedented but legally viable. The Treaty of 1612 includes a provision for goblin wardship of magical heirs in cases of proven trust violations by wizard guardians. It's never been invoked, but the law remains valid. What would it mean, practically? You would remain under Gringotts' protection until your godfather's case is resolved or until you turn 14, whichever comes first. At 14, magical heirs can petition for limited emancipation. Harry didn't hesitate. Let's do it. File the petition. Ragnarok nodded, clearly pleased. Very well. Our legal team will prepare the necessary documentation. He stood. One final matter, Bloodfang suggests you spend time in the ritual room today. Your magical core needs controlled exercise to adapt to its increased power. After Ragnarok and Grimclaw departed, Harry moved to the small ritual chamber adjoining his quarters. Over the past week, he'd spent hours here each day, learning to control his rapidly expanding magical abilities. The chamber was simple, a circle of runes carved into the stone floor, a reflecting pool filled with silver liquid in the center, and various focuses arranged around the perimeter. Harry took his position in the circle, drawing the Potter ritual dagger he now carried everywhere. He pricked his finger, allowing 3 drops of blood to fall into the silver pool. The liquid rippled, then rose in a swirling column before him, reflecting not his physical appearance but his magical core. Harry examined the reflection critically. Where once his core had appeared as disconnected fragments, like a shattered mirror gradually being pieced together, now it showed as a mostly unified whole with just a few fracture lines remaining. The color had shifted too, from muted green to brilliant gold shot through with threads of deep crimson and midnight blue. House colors, he murmured, recognizing the gold and crimson of Gryffindor, the midnight blue of the Peverils. Blood will tell. He closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques Bloodfang had taught him. With each memory charm broken, control had become easier. What once felt like trying to direct a fire hose now felt like conducting an orchestra, still complex, but manageable with proper focus. Harry extended his hand, palm upward, and concentrated on his intent. Magic gathered, visible as golden light pooling in his palm. Slowly, carefully, he shaped it with his will, molding it like clay until a miniature stag stood in his hand, formed entirely of light and magic. Prongs, he whispered, remembering the story from his father's journal. The stag bowed its head, then leapt from his palm to prance around the chamber, leaving golden hoofprints that faded slowly. Harry smiled at the display, pride welling up. A week ago, he couldn't have managed even the simplest wandless spell. Now he could create complex magical constructs through will alone. For the next hour, Harry practiced various forms of magic, elemental manipulation, creating and dispelling light, simple transfiguration. Each success built his confidence, each failure taught him precision. By the time he finished, sweat dampened his hair, but satisfaction warmed his chest. A chime from the main chamber alerted him to a visitor. Wiping his face on a towel, Harry found Bloodfang waiting with his customary array of healing instruments. "You've been practicing," the goblin healer observed, noting Harry's flushed appearance. "Trying to keep my magic balanced," Harry confirmed. "It feels eager. Like it wants to be used after being suppressed for so long." A apt description. Bloodfang gestured to the healing table. "Today we tackle the memory blocks related to your accidental magic episodes. 7 charms, all placed between ages 4 and 7. Harry settled onto the table. After a week of treatment, the process had become almost routine, though never comfortable. What should I expect from these memories? Bloodfang positioned his instruments carefully. According to our analysis, each charm correlates to a significant burst of magical ability. Dumbledore seems to have been particularly concerned about your wandless and elemental capabilities. Let's see what he was so afraid of, Harry said grimly. The familiar cold metal touched his temple. Pain lanced through his head as Bloodfang began the incantation. Harry had learned not to fight the discomfort, instead allowing the memories to wash over him as the charms broke one by one. Age 4, accidentally vanishing the cupboard door when Vernon locked him inside without food for 2 days. Age 5, turning his teacher's hair blue when she humiliated him in front of the class. Age 6, healing a broken arm overnight after Dudley pushed him down the stairs. Age 7, unconsciously summoning food from the kitchen when starved for 3 days. Speaking to garden snakes who called him young speaker, and told him stories of a great serpent sleeping beneath an ancient castle. Operating to the school roof to escape Dudley's gang for the first time, terrified yet exhilarated by the sensation. And finally, age 7.5, in the local library, finding a book on meditation and energy control, practicing in secret until he could make small objects float with just his concentration. After each memory, Dumbledore's appearance, sometimes within hours, sometimes days later. Always the same gentle smile, twinkling eyes, and raised wand. Always the same words, "This is for the best, my boy. When the time is right, you'll understand." By the time the last charm broke, Harry was shaking with fury. Dumbledore hadn't just suppressed his memories and abilities, he'd systematically ensured Harry remained helpless, dependent, and ignorant of his own potential. "Breathe, young heir," Bloodfang instructed, handing him a calming draught. "Your magic is responding to your emotions." Harry glanced down, startled to see the golden glow around his hands had intensified to a corona of crackling energy. Small objects around the room, vials, instruments, even Bloodfang's quill, hovered several inches above their surfaces. "Sorry," Harry muttered, accepting the potion and forcing his breathing to slow. Gradually, the objects settled back into place. Impressive control, Bloodfang noted, making an entry in his log. Most wizards would have shattered everything in the room during such an emotional response. Harry drank the potion, feeling its soothing effect spread through his system. 7 more down. Just the final one remains. Yes, the oldest and most complex. Bloodfang studied his notes. "We will attempt it tomorrow, after your core has had time to integrate today's changes. Director Ragnarok wishes to be present. The final charm appears to contain crucial information about your Gryffindor heritage." After Bloodfang left, Harry returned to his main chamber, mentally sorting through the newly recovered memories. Each one revealed not just abilities Dumbledore had feared, but moments of connection: the garden snakes who'd been his first friends, the librarian who'd slipped him books on meditation, Mrs. Fig who'd sometimes tried to help before being obliviated herself. A soft pop announced the arrival of dinner. Harry ate mechanically, mind still processing the day's revelations. Halfway through the meal, a young goblin messenger arrived with a sealed letter. From Director Ragnarok, the messenger explained, bowing slightly before departing. Harry broke the seal, unfolding the parchment eagerly. Heir Potter Black, 2 significant developments. First, our petition for guardianship has been filed with the Ministry. As anticipated, Dumbledore has moved to block it, demanding your physical presentation before the Wizengamot. Our legal team has countered with precedent allowing endangered heirs to testify via secured pensive memory. The Chief Witch has scheduled a hearing for next week. Second, and more urgently, we've received intelligence that Dumbledore has enlisted creatures called house elves in his search. These beings can track magical signatures and bypass most standard wards. While Gringotts remains impenetrable to their abilities, any venture outside would risk detection. I recommend accelerating our timetable. If agreeable, we will proceed with the final memory charm removal tomorrow morning, followed immediately by the Gryffindor inheritance verification ritual. Should the connection prove valid, it would grant you additional legal protections as the heir to a founder's house. Send your response with the messenger who waits outside your door. Director Ragnarok Gringotts Horde Harry read the letter twice, then scrawled his agreement on the bottom before summoning the messenger. House elves. Another magical creature he knew nothing about, another tool in Dumbledore's arsenal. How many resources did the old wizard have at his disposal? After sending his response, Harry moved to the enchanted window, currently showing the vast cavern of the Goblin residential district. Hundreds of goblins went about their evening activities, families sharing meals, craftsmen working on intricate projects, young goblins practicing with small weapons. A whole civilization hidden beneath London, unseen and largely unknown by the wizards above. Just like his true identity had been hidden, buried beneath layers of manipulative magic, kept from him by the man who presented himself as a benevolent leader of the magical world. Not anymore, Harry murmured, the golden glow beneath his skin pulsing in response to his determination. Tomorrow, the last piece of the puzzle. Albus Dumbledore paced his office, the portraits of former headmasters watching silently from their frames. 8 days. 8 days since Harry Potter had vanished without a trace. 8 days of failed tracking charms, fruitless searches, and growing dread. Nothing from the house elves either, Headmaster, Minerva McGonagall reported from the doorway, her Scottish accent more pronounced with stress. They've searched every magical district in Britain. Dumbledore stopped his pacing, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. Thank you, Minerva. Please ask them to expand their search to the continent. Focus on areas with known Potter or Black properties. McGonagall's eyebrows rose. Black properties? Surely you don't think Sirius Black? No, no, Dumbledore said quickly. But Harry's grandmother was Doria Black. The family connection might have activated old wardstones or portkeys. After McGonagall left, Dumbledore moved to a cabinet behind his desk, tapping it with his wand to reveal a hidden compartment. From within, he withdrew a silvery cloak that seemed to flow like water through his fingers. Where are you, Harry? He murmured, running his hands over the invisibility cloak. And who has found you? A flash of green from the fireplace interrupted his thoughts. Headmaster. Arthur Weasley's head appeared in the flames, expression urgent. I've just heard something from the Goblin Liaison Office. Gringotts has filed a petition for magical guardianship of an unnamed underage wizard, citing systematic magical abuse by the current guardian. Dumbledore felt ice form in his stomach. When was this filed? This morning. They're keeping the child's identity sealed, but the rumor is it's someone important. The Chief Witch has scheduled an emergency session for next week. Thank you, Arthur. Keep me informed of any developments. After the connection closed, Dumbledore sat heavily in his chair, mind racing. Gringotts. The goblins had Harry. Somehow, the boy had found his way to the bank and triggered, what? The inheritance protocols. The old family magics. Fawkes, he addressed the phoenix perched by the window, I fear our plans may need significant adjustment. The majestic bird trilled a soft, questioning note. If the goblins have broken my memory modifications. Dumbledore shook his head. The boy isn't ready. The power within him, he can't possibly control it without proper guidance. Without understanding the prophecy's true implications. He stood abruptly, moving to the fireplace and throwing in a handful of flow powder. Severus Snape, he called. Moments later, the sallow face of the potions master appeared. Headmaster. I need a specialized potion, Severus. Memory reinforcement with a compulsion component. As quickly as possible. Snape's dark eyes narrowed. That borders on illegal, Headmaster. The Ministry classifies such combinations as restricted. Nevertheless, it is necessary. I'll explain when you deliver it. Dumbledore's tone left no room for argument. After Snape's reluctant agreement, Dumbledore returned to his contemplation of the invisibility cloak. Everything had been proceeding according to plan. The boy was growing up humble, without the arrogance his heritage might have encouraged. His magic, properly bound until he was mature enough to handle its full potential. His knowledge, carefully curated to ensure he developed along the right path. Now it was all unraveling. If Harry learned the truth too soon, about his family's true power, about the prophecy's full scope, about his connection to Gryffindor and what that meant for the Horcrux embedded in his scar. Too soon, Dumbledore murmured. Far too soon. A soft chime alerted him to another visitor. Straightening his robes and composing his features into their customary benign expression, he called, Enter. Mad-Eye Moody stumped through the door, Magical Eye swiveling frantically. Nothing at the Potter properties, he reported gruffly. Place in Godric's Hollow is still in ruins, and the manor in Wales is sealed with blood wards. Couldn't get within 100 yards. Blood wards? Dumbledore frowned. Those shouldn't have activated without Harry physically visiting the property. Moody shrugged. All I know is they're up and running now. Old magic, powerful. Nearly took my other leg when I tried to push through. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. If the Potter family magic was reactivating, it meant Harry's true heritage was reasserting itself, breaking through the careful constraints Dumbledore had established. Thank you, Alastair. Please continue monitoring the properties. If the boy appears at any of them. Stun first, ask questions later. Moody suggested, his magical eye fixing unerringly on Dumbledore's face. Gently, Dumbledore emphasized. The boy must be unharmed. He's simply confused, likely manipulated by whoever found him. After Moody departed, Dumbledore allowed his genial mask to fall away, revealing the calculating expression beneath. Pieces of a complex chess game were moving without his direction now. Adjustments would be necessary. Sacrifices, perhaps. The Goblin petition was particularly troubling. If they had evidence of his memory charms, but no, the modifications were too subtle, too carefully crafted to be detected by standard means. Unless they had broken them. Unless Harry's own magic had fought against the bindings. Dumbledore moved to a shelf containing various arcane instruments, selecting one that resembled a silver stethoscope. He placed it against his temple, then focused his thoughts on the memory charms he'd placed on Harry Potter over the years. The feedback nearly brought him to his knees. Static. Distortion. The magical connections weren't just weakened, they were shattered, the fragments dissolving as Harry's natural magical signature reasserted itself. By Merlin, Dumbledore whispered, steadying himself against his desk. They've broken nearly all of them. 7 years of careful work, undone in just over a week. The implications were staggering. If Harry regained all his memories, all his power. Dumbledore straightened, resolution hardening his features. This changed everything. The boy couldn't be allowed to develop unchecked, not with what lay dormant within him. Not with the connection to Gryffindor's magic that, if fully awakened, might accelerate the Horcrux's influence. The greater good demanded action. Difficult action. He moved to his fireplace once more. "Kingsley Shacklebolt," he called. The face of the tall Auror appeared in the flames. "Headmaster. Any news of Harry?" "Nothing certain," Dumbledore said carefully. "But I have reason to believe the goblins may be holding him at Gringotts against his will. I need information on their security protocols, particularly for their lower levels." Kingsley's expression turned wary. "That's highly classified, sir. And suggesting the goblins have kidnapped the boy who lived, that's a serious accusation." "I understand your concern," Dumbledore said soothingly. "But consider the possibilities. A confused, frightened child, manipulated by creatures with a historical grudge against wizardkind. We must at least investigate." After extracting a reluctant promise for information, Dumbledore ended the call. The pieces were in motion. If Harry couldn't be recovered peacefully, other measures would be necessary. For the greater good. Always for the greater good. Deep beneath Gringotts, Harry woke from a restless sleep filled with fragmented dreams, red eyes, green light, a woman's scream. The final memory charm weighed on his unconscious mind like a physical presence, creating echoes of the truth it concealed. He sat up, reflexively checking the golden glow beneath his skin, steady, strong, with occasional pulses of deeper color when his emotions intensified. After nearly breaking his water glass the previous day, he'd spent hours practicing control, learning to moderate the flow of power that seemed to grow stronger with each broken charm. A soft knock announced Bloodfang's arrival. The goblin healer entered, followed by Director Ragnarok and a third goblin Harry hadn't met, older than the others, with intricate silver patterns woven into his beard. "Heir Potterblack," Ragnarok greeted him formally. "This is Ancestral Keeper Iron Fist, our most knowledgeable scholar of founder lineages." Harry bowed respectfully. "An honor, Keeper Iron Fist." "The honor may be mine, young heir," the ancient goblin replied, studying Harry with keen eyes. "If the final memory charm reveals what we suspect, this day will be recorded in goblin histories." "No pressure," Harry muttered, drawing a surprised bark of laughter from Ragnarok. "Indeed." The director gestured to the healing chamber. "Shall we proceed? The sooner we break the final charm, the sooner we can confirm your lineage and file the appropriate documentation with the ministry." In the healing chamber, Bloodfang's preparations were more elaborate than for previous sessions. Additional crystals surrounded the stone table, and intricate runic patterns had been inscribed on the floor and walls. "The final memory charm is different from the others," Bloodfang explained as Harry settled onto the table. "It contains not just suppressed memories but what appears to be a knowledge transfer, information placed directly into your mind and then locked away." "Knowledge transfer?" Harry frowned. "From whom?" "That remains unclear," Iron Fist said, arranging ancient-looking scrolls around the perimeter of the room. "But the magical signature has two distinct components, Dumbledore's, and something much older." "Prepare yourself," Ragnarok warned. "This process may trigger a magical inheritance awakening if the Gryffindor connection is confirmed. Such awakenings are intense." Harry took a deep breath, centering himself using the meditation techniques he'd been practicing. "I'm ready." Bloodfang placed not just the usual circlet on Harry's head but a second one over his heart. "We begin." The goblin's chant this time was different, deeper, more complex, with Iron Fist joining in at key moments. The crystals around Harry glowed not with their usual blue light but with red-gold fire that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Pain exploded behind Harry's eyes, far more intense than any previous session. He might have screamed, he wasn't sure. The world dissolved into fragments of burning light. Then came the memories, not just memories, but knowledge pouring directly into his consciousness, a ritual chamber in Godric's Hollow. His mother, 7 months pregnant, surrounded by candles and rune circles. James Potter standing guard at the perimeter, wand at the ready. "It's time," Lily whispered, placing her hands on her swollen belly. The bloodline must be awakened. Magic swirled around her, ancient and powerful. James looked nervous but resolute. "Are you sure about this, Lily?" The grimoire warned that awakening the Gryffindor magic before birth is risky. "We don't have a choice," Lily replied, her green eyes fierce. "Dumbledore knows part of the prophecy, but not all. He doesn't understand what's coming." The ritual proceeded, magic flowing into Lily's womb, into the unborn Harry. Something responded, magic recognizing magic, bloodline acknowledging bloodline. A blinding flash, then infant Harry seeing through newborn eyes as his father performed a second ritual, pressing a sword against his tiny palm, a single drop of blood welling up to be absorbed by the ancient metal. "The sword acknowledges him," James said in awe. "The Gryffindor heir." Then Dumbledore, arriving at Godric's Hollow to see baby Harry. His expression changing from benevolent to calculating as he observed the infant's unusual magical aura. "James, Lily, this child has extraordinary potential. The prophecy, it makes sense now. But this power, it's too much for a child. Too dangerous." His parents' arguments, overruled by Dumbledore's insistence. "A temporary binding only, until he's old enough to control it. For his own safety." The wand raising, the first memory charm taking hold, suppressing not just Harry's memories but the very knowledge of his Gryffindor heritage, the awakened powers, the full prophecy his mother had discovered in the Potter grimoire, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born as the 7th month dies, born of lightning and ancient line renewed. The Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, the blood of kings runs in his veins, the magic of founders flows through his heart. Either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives, but beware the shattered soul, for pieces scattered become anchors to life. The heir of two houses must unite the old magic or all shall fall to darkness. The memory solidified with crystalline clarity, and something else happened. The golden glow beneath Harry's skin erupted outward, engulfing his entire body in a corona of brilliant light. The crystals surrounding the table shattered, their energy absorbed into the swirling maelstrom of magic. Harry felt his consciousness expanding, connecting with something vast and ancient. Knowledge poured into him, not memories this time, but instinctive understanding of magic in its purest form. Languages he'd never studied became comprehensible. Magical theory that would challenge master wizards unfolded in his mind with perfect clarity. And power, raw, elemental power surging through every cell, restructuring, enhancing, awakening dormant potential that had been locked away first by Dumbledore's charms, then by the Horcrux's parasitic presence. The Horcrux. Harry could feel it now, a dark, malignant thing embedded in his scar, writhing in agony as the Gryffindor magic burned through the bindings that had kept the two forces in uneasy balance. "Fight it." Ragnarok's voice seemed to come from very far away. "The soul fragment, your magic is challenging it. Push it out." Harry focused his will on the dark presence, instinctively understanding what it was, a piece of Voldemort's shattered soul, accidentally embedded in his scar that Halloween night. The golden light intensified, driving into the scar like a spear of pure magic. The pain was excruciating, like having his head split open. But beneath the pain was certainty. This foreign soul fragment had no right to his body, his magic, his destiny. "Out!" Harry commanded, the word emerging not as English but as something older, the language of magic itself, of intent made manifest. A screaming wail filled the chamber as black, oily smoke erupted from Harry's scar. It tried to maintain its form, to flee, but Iron Fist was ready. The ancient goblin threw a crystal vial into the mass of darkness, capturing it in a swirling vortex of containment magic. "Got it," the keeper crowed triumphantly as the vial sealed itself. Harry collapsed back onto the table, gasping for breath. The golden aura gradually receded, sinking beneath his skin once more, but different now, more integrated, as if it had always been part of him rather than a separate force. "Extraordinary," Bloodfang murmured, scanning Harry with his instruments. "The magical core has completely restructured itself." And the scar. Harry raised a trembling hand to his forehead. Where once the lightning bolt had been raised and angry, now he felt smooth skin. It's gone. Not gone, Ragnar said, leaning closer to examine it. But changed. No longer curse scarring, just an ordinary mark. Iron Fist approached, holding the crystal vial at arm's length. The black smoke within churned angrily, occasionally forming what looked like a distorted face. A soul fragment, he confirmed. What wizards call a Horcrux, the darkest magic imaginable. Your enemy split his soul and a piece lodged in you when the killing curse rebounded. Dumbledore knew, Harry said, the knowledge crystal clear from the recovered memory. He knew I carried a piece of Voldemort inside me. That's why he bound my magic. He was afraid the Gryffindor power would either destroy the Horcrux before he could study it, or worse, that Voldemort might access that power through our connection. A gamble either way, Ragnar growled. Using a child as a container for a soul fragment, watching, waiting, planning to use you as both weapon and sacrifice. Harry sat up slowly, testing his body. Despite the magical upheaval, he felt stronger than before, more centered. The prophecy, the full prophecy. My mother found it in the Potter Grimoire. Dumbledore only knew the first part. The heir of two houses must unite the old magic, Ragnar quoted. Potter and Gryffindor. Or perhaps Potter and Black. Or even Gryffindor and Peverell. The phrasing is deliberately ambiguous, as prophecies often are. And the shattered soul, that's the Horcruxes. Harry's mind raced, connecting pieces of information. Pieces scattered become anchors to life. Voldemort didn't just make one Horcrux. He made several, Iron Fist agreed grimly, placing the captured soul fragment in a heavily warded box. This knowledge changes everything. The Dark Lord is not truly defeated, merely disembodied. He can return. Not if we find and destroy the other pieces first, Harry said, determination hardening his voice. But that's for later. Right now, we need to confirm my lineage officially and file the documentation with the Ministry. If Dumbledore realizes I've broken free of his control completely, he will become desperate, Ragnar finished. Yes. To the inheritance ritual chamber. Can you stand? Harry slid from the table, surprised to find his legs steady beneath him. In fact, his entire body felt different, stronger, more coordinated, as if the magical awakening had enhanced his physical form as well. This way, Iron Fist directed, leading them through a door Harry hadn't noticed before. The inheritance chamber took Harry's breath away. Larger than his entire suite, it featured a massive circular platform in the center, surrounded by 7 pillars carved with the crests of the oldest magical families. The ceiling arched high above, enchanted to show the night sky despite being hundreds of feet underground. Stand in the center, Iron Fist instructed, moving to a control podium. The ritual will test your blood against the magical signatures of the founder lines. Harry stepped onto the platform, which illuminated with a soft glow at his touch. Ragnar and Bloodfang took positions at 2 of the pillars, while Iron Fist began an incantation from the podium. By blood and magic, by right and lineage, we call upon the ancient powers to recognize their heir, Iron Fist intoned. Let what is hidden be revealed, let what is dormant awaken, let what is rightful be claimed. The platform beneath Harry's feet began to glow brighter, patterns of light spiraling outward to connect with the pillars. From within his robes, the Peverell ring and black dagger he carried grew warm against his skin. Present the artifacts, Ragnar called. Harry withdrew the ring and dagger, holding them before him. Both objects began to glow with inner light, resonating with the magic flowing through the chamber. Blood calls to blood, Iron Fist continued. Magic calls to magic. Let the heir be known. Without conscious thought, Harry knew what to do. He used the black dagger to make a small cut on his palm, then pressed the bleeding hand to the platform. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Light exploded upward, engulfing Harry in a column of radiance that shifted through colors, the gold and crimson of Gryffindor, the midnight blue of Peveril, the silver and emerald of Black, and the rich burgundy of Potter. The pillars around the chamber responded, 4 of the 7 blazing with answering light. Above Harry's head, magical images formed, a roaring lion for Gryffindor, a hooded figure holding a lantern for Peveril, a raven in flight for Black, and a stag rampant for Potter. The blood speaks. Iron Fist's voice rose above the magical display. Hadrian James Potter Black, son of James Charles Potter and Lily Evans Potter, grandson of Doria Black, descendant of Ignotus Peveril, true heir of Godric Gryffindor by unbroken line. The magic reached a crescendo, the images merging into a combined crest above Harry's head, a shield quartered with the symbols of all 4 houses, crowned with a simple golden circlet. Then, gradually, the light receded. The magical display faded, leaving the chamber in relative darkness once more. But something had changed, the air itself seemed to acknowledge Harry's presence, the very stones of Gringotts responding to his confirmed heritage. "It is done," Ragnarok said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "The inheritance is confirmed beyond any possible challenge. Not even Dumbledore can dispute this evidence." Bloodfang approached with a recording crystal, which had captured the entire ritual. "This will be filed with the Ministry immediately, along with our petition for guardianship. Under Clause 7 of the Ancient Houses Act, confirmed heirs of founder lines cannot be placed under magical guardianship without approval from the full Wisengamot, which requires weeks to assemble. So Dumbledore can't legally force me back to the Dursleys," Harry confirmed, examining the newly created crest that had somehow imprinted itself on his robes. "Not without committing explicit political suicide," Ragnarok agreed. "Now, there is much to discuss regarding your heritage, but first, rest. The magical awakening has drained your core significantly." Harry nodded, suddenly aware of bone-deep fatigue beneath the lingering exhilaration. "Tomorrow we plan our next moves." "Indeed. The chessboard has changed entirely, Heir Potter Black Peveril Gryffindor. Or would you prefer a simpler address?" The goblin's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "Harry is fine when it's just us," he replied with a tired smile. "Save the formal titles for when we're scaring the Ministry." News traveled fast in the magical world, even carefully controlled news. By late afternoon, whispers had spread through the Ministry of Magic, an heir to Gryffindor had been confirmed at Gringotts, an inheritance ritual of unprecedented power had registered on the Department of Mystery's magical detection grid, a petition for goblin guardianship had been filed for a ward of extraordinary importance. No name was officially attached to these events, but speculation ran wild. When Dumbledore strode into the Ministry atrium that evening, headed for an emergency meeting with Minister Fudge, the whispers followed him like persistent shadows. "Is it true, Dumbledore?" Lucius Malfoy's silky voice intercepted him near the security desk. "Has Potter claimed his inheritance?" The goblins are being unusually tight-lipped. Dumbledore maintained his benign expression with effort. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to, Lucius. Harry is safely with his relatives, as he has been since his parents' tragic passing." Malfoy's smile didn't reach his cold grey eyes. "Indeed? How curious. My sources indicate a major inheritance ritual took place at Gringotts this morning. A founder's heir claiming their birthright. And now I find you rushing to the minister's office." He tapped his snake-headed cane thoughtfully against the marble floor. "Coincidences do pile up, don't they?" "If you'll excuse me," Dumbledore said smoothly, "the minister is expecting me." As he walked away, Dumbledore's mind raced. If Lucius Malfoy knew about the inheritance ritual, others would too. The carefully constructed narrative surrounding Harry Potter was unraveling by the hour. In Fudge's office, the situation deteriorated further. The minister paced nervously, waving a sheaf of parchment stamped with the Gringotts seal. "This is unprecedented, Dumbledore. Goblin guardianship? Founder heir status? And the boy's name? Potter Black Peveril Gryffindor? What in Merlin's name is going on?" "May I see the documentation, Cornelius?" Dumbledore asked calmly, though his heart hammered in his chest. Fudge thrust the parchments at him. The goblins have filed everything by the book. Magical guardianship abuse. Memory charm evidence. Will suppression. If even half of this is true. Dumbledore scanned the documents, his worst fears confirmed with each paragraph. The goblins hadn't just broken his memory charms, they documented them, catalogued them, prepared legal testimony around them. The will excerpt alone would be damaging enough, but combined with evidence of 47 separate memory modifications and magical bindings. This is a misunderstanding, he said finally, looking up from the parchments. Harry's placement with his Muggle relatives was necessary for blood protection rituals. As for the memory modifications, they were minor adjustments to help him cope with accidental magic incidents, standard practice for Muggle-raised magical children. 47 modifications is hardly standard practice. Fudge spluttered. And suppressing his parents' will? Blocking his family inheritances? The Wizengamot will have questions, Albus. Many questions. What matters now is finding Harry and ensuring his safety, Dumbledore redirected smoothly. The boy is confused, possibly being manipulated by the goblins for their own purposes. Fudge's expression turned calculating. The goblins claim he's perfectly safe and acting of his own volition. They've offered to provide pensive testimony from the boy himself at next week's hearing. He tugged at his pinstriped robes nervously. The political implications, an heir to Gryffindor, Albus. Do you understand what this means? Dumbledore understood all too well. Harry's confirmed status as Gryffindor's heir would grant him political standing on par with the oldest pureblood families, at age 8. By the time he reached Hogwarts age, he could potentially wield more political influence than Dumbledore himself. We must proceed cautiously, he advised. Allow me to speak with the boy. I can explain the necessity of the protections I put in place. The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday, Fudge said. Until then, the goblins have legal custody. I can't interfere without risking a rebellion, Albus. You know how they are about their banking laws. After extracting a promise from Fudge to keep the situation contained, Dumbledore departed, outwardly serene but inwardly seething. Everything was falling apart. Years of careful planning, of subtle manipulation, all undone because the boy had somehow found his way to Gringotts. As he reached the atrium, a tall figure in aura robes approached, Kingsley Shacklebolt, looking troubled. A word, Headmaster, the aura requested quietly, guiding Dumbledore to a relatively private alcove. What have you found? Dumbledore asked, keeping his voice low. Nothing you'll like, Kingsley admitted. Gringotts has activated their highest security protocols. The lower levels are locked down completely, triple goblin guard rotations, ancient wards reactivated. Whatever they're protecting down there, they consider it their most valuable asset. Harry, Dumbledore murmured. They've taken him into the deep vaults. There's more, Kingsley continued reluctantly. The Department of Mysteries registered a magical surge this morning consistent with a major Horcrux containment event. Something about a soul fragment being extracted and contained. He fixed Dumbledore with a penetrating stare. Did you know, Albus? Did you know the boy carried a piece of you-know-who inside him? Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly. So the Gryffindor inheritance had done exactly what he'd feared, forcibly expelled the Horcrux. Another piece of his careful plan in ruins. It was necessary, Kingsley. The connection was the only way to ensure Voldemort's final defeat when he inevitably returns. The aura's expression hardened. You left a piece of that monster inside a child. For years. While he lived with muggles who mistreated him. The greater good, Dumbledore began. Save it, Kingsley cut him off, something he'd never done before. The boy is safe now. The soul fragment is contained. And you have serious questions to answer next week. He straightened his robes. I've respected you my entire life, Albus. I've followed you, trusted your judgment. But this. The aura walked away, leaving Dumbledore alone in the alcove, the weight of his unraveling plans pressing down upon him. For the first time in many years, the great Albus Dumbledore felt genuine fear, not for himself, but for the carefully constructed future he had designed to defeat Voldemort. A future that now lay in shambles because an 8-year-old boy had accidentally apparat to Gringotts and collapsed on the marble floor. Back in his chambers beneath Gringotts, Harry sat cross-legged on the floor, his mother's journal open before him, comparing her notes with the contents of an ancient leather-bound book, the Potter family grimoire, retrieved from the main Potter vault that morning. The past 2 days since the inheritance ritual had been a whirlwind of activity. With his magical core stabilized and his true heritage confirmed, Harry had begun exploring the full extent of his birthright, visiting his family vaults, examining heirlooms, reading journals left by his parents and grandparents. Focus, he murmured to himself, returning his attention to the passage before him. The Gryffindor awakening differs from standard magical maturation in several key aspects, the grimoire stated. Where most wizards experience gradual development of their magical cores between ages 11 and 17, Gryffindor heirs undergo a catalytic transformation when the bloodline is recognized. Ancient magic, dormant for generations, activates fully, enhancing not only magical capacity but mental acuity, physical attributes, and innate magical talents. His mother's notes in the margin added, Harry's pre-birth awakening ritual succeeded partially, but Dumbledore's binding suppressed the full expression. When these bindings are removed, expect significant magical manifestation. Prepare containment protocols if necessary. Harry smiled wryly. Containment protocols had indeed been necessary. The explosion of magic during his inheritance confirmation had shattered every crystal in the ritual chamber and cracked 2 of the stone pillars. A knock at his door interrupted his studies. "Enter," he called, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. Ragnarok strode in, accompanied by a goblin Harry now recognized as Sharp Fong, head of the Gringotts legal department. Both looked grimly satisfied. "News?" Harry asked, setting aside the books. "Significant developments," Ragnarok confirmed. "First, our petition has created precisely the political chaos we anticipated. Dumbledore is scrambling to maintain control of the narrative, but with your inheritance publicly confirmed, his options are limited. The Ministry demands your appearance at next week's hearing," Sharp Fong added, "but we've negotiated a pensive testimony alternative, citing security concerns." Harry nodded thoughtfully. "Has Dumbledore made any overt moves?" "Several," Ragnarok's expression darkened. "He attempted to access your family vaults this morning, claiming guardian authority. When denied, he tried to invoke an obscure educational trust clause as Hogwarts headmaster." Getting desperate, Harry observed. "What about Sirius? Any progress?" "This is where matters become interesting," Sharp Fong said, producing a scroll from within his robes. "We filed for release of your godfather's trial transcripts, only to discover." "There never was a trial," Harry finished, the knowledge somehow not surprising after everything else he'd learned about Dumbledore's manipulations. "Precisely. Sirius Black was remanded to Azkaban on Bartemius Crouch's direct order, countersigned by Albus Dumbledore as Chief Warlock. No trial. No Veritaserum testimony. No presentation of evidence." Harry's eyes narrowed, the golden glow beneath his skin pulsing with his anger. "They just threw him in prison. To get him out of the way." "So it appears," Ragnarok agreed. "We've filed an emergency petition for trial with the DMLE, citing newly discovered evidence, namely, your parents will identifying Pettigrew as secret keeper." "How long before they have to respond?" 72 hours by law, Sharp Fong replied. "Though they may attempt to delay." Harry stood and began pacing, mind racing through possibilities. "We need to accelerate our timetable. If Dumbledore realizes we're moving to free Sirius, he'll try to block it. And we still don't know what he's planning for the guardianship hearing." "There is another option," Ragnarok said carefully. "More aggressive, but potentially effective." "I'm listening." "A press release. Limited information, carefully framed, released to selected journalists. Harry stopped pacing. Go public? Before the hearing? Control the narrative, Sharpfong advised. Currently, rumors abound, but facts are scarce. If we release specific information, your discovery at Gringotts, the medical evidence of memory charms, your godfather's illegal imprisonment, we set the terms of the debate. Dumbledore's greatest advantage has always been his public persona, Ragnarok added. The kindly grandfather figure, the wise leader of the light. If that image is tarnished. Harry considered the suggestion. It was risky, potentially exposing him to more attention than he wanted. But the strategic advantage was clear. Who would you release this information to? Rita Skeeter at the Daily Prophet has a particular talent for damaging reputations, Sharpfong suggested with a toothy smile. While Augusta Longbottom controls the more respectable Magical Herald. Between them, we could reach both the sensation seekers and the politically minded. Do it, Harry decided. But no direct quotes from me, no details about my current location, and nothing about the Horcrux or the complete prophecy. Those stay secret for now. Ragnarok nodded approvingly. A wise decision. We will prepare the release immediately. He hesitated, then added, there is one more matter. Your ancestral properties. Potter Manor, Harry said. I've been reading about it in my father's journals. Yes. The wards have reactivated, responding to your magical awakening. According to our sources, Alastair Moody attempted to investigate and was rather forcefully rejected by the boundary protections. Harry couldn't suppress a grin at that image. Good. The manor's protecting itself. Indeed. However, it might be beneficial for you to formally claim the property. A brief visit, just long enough to connect with the ward stones and update the access permissions. Is it safe? Harry asked. Dumbledore must have people watching all my properties. We can create a secure port key directly to the manor's ritual chamber, Sharpfong explained. The ancestral wards will recognize your blood and allow direct transportation, bypassing external surveillance. Harry thought about it. Claiming Potter Manor would give him another secure location, somewhere besides Gringotts where he could continue his research and preparation. Somewhere his parents had lived, where he might find more connections to his heritage. When? He asked simply. Tomorrow night, Ragnarok suggested. After the press release creates a distraction. Dumbledore will be busy managing the political fallout, giving us a window of opportunity. After finalizing the details, the goblins departed, leaving Harry to return to his studies. But his mind kept wandering to the coming days, the press release, the visit to Potter Manor, the guardianship hearing, Sirius's potential freedom. So much happening so quickly, after years of enforced stagnation at the Dursleys. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying. He moved to the enchanted window, which currently showed a view of Diagon Alley from high above. Wizards and witches moved about their business, oblivious to the political earthquake about to shake their world. What would they think when they learned that Dumbledore, their celebrated leader, had systematically manipulated and memory-charmed a child? That the boy who lived had been deliberately kept ignorant of his heritage, his power, his rightful place in their society? Harry touched the window lightly, watching his reflection, a skinny boy with untidy black hair, green eyes that seemed older than his years, and the fading remnant of a lightning scar on his forehead. Not just Harry anymore. Hadrian James Potter Black Peverell Gryffindor. Heir to ancient houses. Prophesied challenger to a dark lord who wasn't as defeated as everyone believed. No pressure, he murmured again, echoing his earlier comment to Ragnarok. He returned to the grimoire, determined to learn everything he could about his heritage, his magic, his destiny. Knowledge was power, and he'd been kept powerless for too long. The press release would change everything. By this time tomorrow, the wizarding world would be in uproar, and Albus Dumbledore would be fighting for his political life. And Harry? Harry would be taking his first steps into a world that had been kept from him, his birthright, his legacy, his home. Potter Manor awaited its heir. Rita Skeeter's acid green quill hovered eagerly over her parchment as she reread the official Gringotts statement for the third time, hardly daring to believe the story that had fallen into her lap. Official statement from Gringotts Bank regarding heir Hadrian James Potter Black Peveril Gryffindor on April 28, 1988, the heir to houses Potter, Black, Peveril, and Gryffindor collapsed within Gringotts main hall due to magical distress. Medical examination by goblin healers revealed 47 separate memory charms and numerous magical bindings, all bearing the magical signature of Albus Dumbledore, current chief warlock and Hogwarts headmaster. Subsequent investigation uncovered the illegal sealing of James and Lily Potter's will, which explicitly forbade placement of their son with Muggle relatives and named Sirius Black as rightful guardian. Further, the will identified Peter Pettigrew, not Sirius Black, as the Potter's secret keeper, evidence that was suppressed when Black was imprisoned without trial. Gringotts has invoked the Treaty of 1612, Clause 27, claiming temporary wardship of heir Potter Black Peveril Gryffindor while these serious violations of magical law are investigated. A formal hearing is scheduled before the Wisengamot on May 6. All inquiries should be directed to Sharp Fong, head of Gringotts' legal department. It was the story of the decade, perhaps the century. The boy who lived, secretly the heir to Gryffindor himself. Memory charms placed by Albus Dumbledore. An innocent man in Azkaban. The implications were staggering. Rita's mind raced with potential headlines: Dumbledore's deception, boy who lived subjected 24 of memory charms, Gryffindor heir rises, Harry Potter's true identity revealed, Sirius Black innocent. Potter will names Pettigrew as secret keeper. Oh, this would sell papers. This would make her career. This would shake the wizarding world to its foundations. With a predatory smile, Rita Skeeter began to write. Chapter 3, New Alliances. Morning sunlight filtered through the enchanted windows of Harry's Gringotts quarters, casting golden patterns across the headline that had sent the wizarding world into chaos overnight. Boy who lived found, Harry Potter escapes Dumbledore's web of deception. Harry tossed the newspaper onto a growing pile of similar publications. The Daily Prophet, the Magical Herald, Witch Weekly, and even the normally staid Practical Potioneer had rushed special editions to print. Rita Skeeter's article proved particularly vicious, detailing the systematic magical abuse perpetrated by the supposedly benevolent leader of the light. "Enjoying your handiwork?" asked Blood Fong, entering with his usual medical kit. Harry shrugged. "It's weird seeing my name everywhere. But necessary." The goblin healer grunted agreement, setting up his instruments for the morning examination. 2 weeks after Harry's collapse in the Gringotts lobby, his recovery had become routine: daily magical core assessments, calibration rituals, and power balancing exercises. "The magical fluctuations are stabilizing," Blood Fong announced after waving a crystal sphere over Harry's chest. The final memory charms removal triggered accelerated magical maturation. "You're effectively displaying the magical capacity of a 14-year-old, though control still requires refinement." "Better than yesterday," Harry noted, calling a small ball of golden light to dance between his fingers. "Watch this." He concentrated, and the light separated into 3 distinct spheres that orbited his palm before merging back into one. Acceptable progress, Blood Fong acknowledged, the closest thing to praise Harry had ever received from the taciturn healer. "Director Ragnarok requests your presence when we finish. The Ministry has responded to our petition regarding your godfather." Harry's pulse quickened. "Already? I thought they'd drag their feet for weeks." The press coverage forced their hand. Public opinion has shifted dramatically. After Blood Fong completed the examination, Harry changed into formal robes bearing his newly confirmed family crests, the gold and crimson lion of Gryffindor most prominent, flanked by the Potter stag, the black raven, and the hooded figure of Peveril. The ensemble still felt strange, too grand, too important for a boy who'd spent years in his cousin's cast-offs. Ragnarok waited in his office with Sharp Fong and another goblin Harry recognized as Snagtooth, Gringotts' liaison to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Heir Potter Black, Ragnarok greeted him formally, using the abbreviated title they'd agreed upon for everyday business. "Please, be seated." Harry took the offered chair, noting the thick ministry scroll on Ragnar's desk. News about Sirius? Indeed. Ragnar broke the purple wax seal, unrolling the parchment. The DMLE has scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning regarding Sirius Black's incarceration. Your presence is requested to provide testimony about the evidence contained in your parents' will. Harry leaned forward. They're actually moving on this? After keeping him locked up for 7 years without a trial? Amelia Bones has personally taken charge of the case, Snagtooth explained. She's built a reputation for integrity, and the revelation that Black never received a trial reflects poorly on her department, regardless of who was in charge in 1981. Director Bones has requested a private meeting with you before the formal hearing, Sharpfong added. She suggests her office at 7 tomorrow morning, before the ministry becomes crowded. Harry glanced at Ragnar. Is it safe? With proper precautions. Ragnar pulled a small wooden box from his desk drawer. This is a port key directly to Bones' office, created by her personal house elf to bypass standard ministry security. She's sworn a magical oath not to reveal your location or attempt to detain you. Why such cooperation? Harry asked suspiciously. Dumbledore has influence throughout the ministry. Bones and Dumbledore have a complicated relationship, Snagtooth said delicately. She lost her brother Edgar and his family during the war despite Dumbledore's alleged protection. The implication that he knowingly allowed an innocent man to remain in Azkaban has rekindled old doubts. Harry considered this. So she's not exactly Dumbledore's biggest fan. That helps. What about tonight's plan? Proceeding as scheduled, Ragnar confirmed. The port key to Potter Manor is prepared. Our warders report the ancestral magic has recognized your awakening and is actively preparing for your arrival. How will Sirius factor into all this? Harry asked, trying to plan several moves ahead. If he's released tomorrow, he'll need extensive healing, Sharpfong interjected. 7 years in Azkaban causes significant physical and psychological damage. Our healers can help, but recovery takes time. Then we'll make time, Harry said firmly. I want him transferred directly to Gringotts medical care if he's released. No St. Mungos, no ministry holding cells. From Azkaban straight here. Ambitious, Ragnar noted with approval. But possible, given your status and the illegal nature of his imprisonment. We'll add the requirement to our petition. The meeting continued, refining plans for both the evening's visit to Potter Manor and tomorrow's ministry proceedings. By the time Harry returned to his quarters, his mind buzzed with preparations, contingencies, potential obstacles. Sirius might be free tomorrow. The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. His godfather, a living connection to his parents, someone who should have raised him, who might still want him, despite everything. Harry moved to the trunk he'd purchased through Gringotts agents, expanded inside with multiple compartments for books, clothing, and magical equipment. Most of his newly acquired belongings remained in his family vaults, but he'd selected key items to keep with him, his mother's journals, his father's personal grimoire, the Peveril ring, several defensive artifacts, and clothing suitable for the heir to 4 ancient houses. A lifetime of possessions compressed into one trunk. It felt both pitiful and liberating. Ready for tonight, Heir Potter Black? Iron Fist asked, entering with an ancient wooden box. As ready as I'll ever be, Harry replied, watching curiously as the old goblin set the box on the table. What's that? Something recovered from your family vault that may prove useful at Potter Manor. Iron Fist opened the box to reveal a smooth stone sphere, about the size of a snitch, swirling with misty blue-silver light. A wardstone key. Created by your grandfather Fleamont to allow direct access to the manor's ward controls. Harry reached for the sphere, feeling an immediate resonance as his fingers touched the cool surface. The swirling mist inside brightened, responding to his magic. It recognizes you, Iron Fist observed. That will make tonight's ritual considerably easier. The ward stone chamber lies beneath the manor's foundations, the heart of its magical defenses. With this key, you can update the wards to recognize friends, exclude enemies, and possibly even activate protections that have lain dormant since your grandparents' passing. Harry pocketed the sphere, its weight comforting against his side. I need to prepare. Is there anything else before tonight? Iron Fist hesitated, something unusual for the normally decisive goblin. There is one matter. Your mail. The redirected letters Dumbledore intercepted? Yes. The Wisengamot ruled this morning on our petition. All correspondence addressed to Harry Potter must be surrendered to Gringotts as your financial custodian. Iron Fist's expression turned grimly satisfied. The first delivery arrived an hour ago. Harry's breath caught. Sirius's letters. Among others. Iron Fist gestured, and 2 goblin assistants entered carrying 3 large trunks. 7 years of intercepted mail. Our curse breakers have verified it's free from tracking charms or other malicious magic. Dumbledore apparently didn't expect to ever relinquish control of it. After Iron Fist departed, Harry stared at the trunks, emotions warring within him. 7 years of connections stolen from him. 7 years of people trying to reach him while Dumbledore ensured he remained isolated, dependent only on the narrative the old wizard constructed. He opened the first trunk with trembling hands. Inside, thousands of letters, organized chronologically with goblin efficiency. Fan mail from wizard children who grew up hearing stories of the boy who lived. Official correspondence from various ministries and magical organizations. Business proposals. Invitations to events and celebrations. And in a separate box, secured with preservation charms, 84 letters from Sirius Black, 1 for each month of his imprisonment. Each envelope bore the stamp of Azkaban prison and had been sealed with black wax. Harry picked up the first letter, dated December 1981, just weeks after his parents' murder. The parchment felt rough under his fingers, the handwriting surprisingly steady despite the circumstances. Dear Harry, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know where you are. Dumbledore won't tell anyone, says it's for your protection. Maybe he's right. I failed you, pup. Failed your parents. Should have been me as secret keeper. Should have known Peter would betray us. Should have taken you away immediately instead of chasing after him. They say I'll be in here forever. No trial. Crouch signed the order himself. But I need you to know I'd never have betrayed your parents. James was my brother in everything but blood. And you, from the moment you were born, you had me wrapped around your tiny fingers. I don't know if these letters make it past the prison censors. I don't know if anyone will ever give them to you. But I'll keep writing. Every month, they allow 1 letter. And every month, it will be to you. Your godfather. Serious hot tears spilled down Harry's cheeks as he read. The next letter showed shakier handwriting, the next worse still as the effects of Azkaban's dementors took their toll. But month after month, year after year, Sirius had written, sometimes just a few lines about memories of Harry's parents, sometimes rambling paragraphs that betrayed his deteriorating mental state, but always signed the same way, your godfather, Sirius. Harry wiped his eyes, a fierce determination replacing grief. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Dusk painted Potter Manor in shades of amber and gold when Harry arrived via Portkey. The massive stone house stood 3 stories tall, its elegant architecture reminiscent of the Georgian period but with distinctly magical elements, windows that seemed larger inside than outside, a roof adorned with stone creatures that occasionally shifted position, gardens that bloomed impossibly vibrant despite years of neglect. Whoa, Harry breathed, taking in his ancestral home for the first time. Ragnarok and Iron Fist materialized beside him, the Goblin director immediately casting detection spells to verify the property's security. The wards recognize you, Ragnarok confirmed. No alarm has been triggered by our arrival. This place is incredible, Harry said, staring up at the manor. And it's just been sitting here empty all these years? Sealed by blood wards after your grandparents' deaths, Iron Fist explained, moving toward the grand entrance. Your father visited occasionally, but after he went into hiding under the Fidelius charm, no Potter has crossed the threshold. Harry approached the massive oak doors carved with the Potter family crest. Before he could knock, the doors swung open silently, responding to his magical signature. The entrance hall beyond took his breath away, marble floors, a sweeping staircase, enchanted paintings, and everywhere the Potter crest incorporated into the architecture. Despite years without human presence, everything gleamed as if recently cleaned. House elf magic, Ragnarok explained, noting Harry's surprise. The bond to the Potter family would have kept them maintaining the property despite the absence of human masters. As if summoned by his words, 3 loud cracks echoed through the hall. 3 house elves appeared, wearing neat uniforms emblazoned with the Potter crest. The eldest stepped forward, tears already streaming down his long face. Master Harry has returned, the elf squeaked, dropping into a deep bow. Nipsey has waited so long. We felt young master's magic awaken 2 weeks ago, but the old wizard kept trying to breach the wards, so we stayed hidden. Harry knelt to address the emotional elf. Hello, Nipsey. Thank you for taking care of my family's home. Master remembers Nipsey. The elf looked shocked. No, Harry admitted. But I'm learning about everything that was taken from me. Including you. The other elves introduced themselves as Mipsy, Nipsey's wife, and Flopsy, their son. All 3 were overwhelmed with emotion at Harry's return, competing to explain how they'd maintained the manor, protected the grounds from intruders, and preserved the Potter family heirlooms. The old wizard came many times, Flopsy reported indignantly. Tried to trick the wards, he did. But Potter magic knows Potter blood, and you never gave him permission, so he couldn't enter. Dumbledore, Harry clarified for the Goblins. Trying to access Potter artifacts, most likely. We must proceed to the Wardstone chamber, Ragnarok reminded him. Our window of opportunity is limited. Nipsey perked up. Young master wishes to claim the family wards. Nipsey will show the way. Follow me. The elf led them through opulent halls adorned with magical portraits, currently empty, their occupants having fled to other frames during the years of abandonment, past libraries filled with ancient tomes, through a potions laboratory that would make a master brewer envious, and down to a hidden staircase concealed behind a portrait of Godric Gryffindor himself. The founder watches over the heart of Potter magic, Nipsey explained, touching the frame with reverence. Only Potter blood can pass. Harry stepped forward, drawn by an instinctive connection to the painted figure. The portrait depicted Gryffindor not as the elderly, white-bearded wizard shown in Hogwarts illustrations, but as a man in his prime, powerful, dark-haired, with penetrating eyes that seemed to evaluate Harry's worthiness. Blood of my blood, Harry whispered, the words coming unbidden to his lips. The portrait swung forward, revealing a narrow stone staircase spiraling down into darkness. Mage-like torches ignited automatically as they descended, illuminating steps worn smooth by centuries of Potter feet. At the bottom, they entered a perfectly circular chamber. In its center stood a pedestal supporting a massive crystal, the Wardstone, pulsing with blue-white light that cast rippling patterns across the walls. Around the pedestal, 7 smaller crystals hovered in midair, each connected to the central stone by threads of magical energy. The heart of Potter Manor, Iron Fist breathed, clearly impressed despite his extensive experience with magical artifacts. Few family wardstones remained so active after years without attunement. Harry approached the pedestal, feeling the wardstone key in his pocket grow warm. What do I do? Place the key on the pedestal, Ragnarok instructed. Then add 3 drops of blood to activate the attunement ritual. Harry followed the directions, setting the small sphere beside the massive crystal and pricking his finger with a ritual dagger. As his blood touched the stone, the entire chamber flared with blinding light. The 7 satellite crystals began rotating around the central stone, faster and faster until they formed a continuous ring of light. Power rushed through Harry, connecting him to every stone, brick, and timber of the manor. In his mind's eye, he could see the entire property, the boundaries, the weak points in the wards, the layers of protection accumulated by generations of potters. And deeper still, a connection to something ancient beneath the manor itself, a wellspring of magic that had attracted his ancestors to this location centuries ago. "I can feel everything," Harry gasped, overwhelmed by the sensory input. "Focus," Ragnarok's voice seemed distant. "Visualize who you wish to grant access to. Exclude those who would do harm." Harry concentrated, picturing Sirius first, his godfather, blood adopted by James Potter in a ritual mentioned in his father's journal. The wards pulsed acceptance. Then the goblins who had helped him, each recognized and granted limited access. Finally, exclusions, Dumbledore most prominently, then others he considered threats, Vernon and Petunia Dursley, Cornelius Fudge, anyone bearing Voldemort's dark mark. With each addition and exclusion, the ward matrix adjusted, growing stronger, more refined. Harry sensed ancient protections awakening, defensive measures established by his ancestors rising from dormancy. "Something's happening," Harry warned as the chamber began to tremble. "The wards are changing." The Gryffindor blood, Iron Fist realized. "It's activating protections tied to the Founder's magic." The light from the ward stone changed, gold and crimson threads now intertwining with the blue-white energy. Above the pedestal, a ghostly image formed, the same quartered crest that had appeared during Harry's inheritance ritual, now embedding itself into the very fabric of the manor's protection. With a final pulse of magic that knocked both goblins off their feet, the ritual completed. The satellite crystals returned to their original positions, now glowing with steady, bright light in multiple colors representing the different protection layers. Harry staggered slightly, steadying himself against the pedestal. "That was intense." "Unprecedented," Ragnarok corrected, recovering his dignity as he rose. "The ward stone has incorporated your full magical inheritance. Potter Manor is now protected by Gryffindor-level wards." "What does that mean, practically?" Harry asked. Iron Fist's expression was odd. "Founder-level wards are legendary. They don't just keep enemies out, they actively confuse and misdirect. To unwelcome visitors, the manor might appear as a crumbling ruin, or shift location slightly, or simply become unplottable. Not even the Ministry's finest ward breakers could penetrate these defenses without your explicit permission." "Excellent," Harry said with satisfaction. "Now Dumbledore can't access anything here, no matter how hard he tries." The manor seemed to agree. As they ascended from the chamber, Harry noticed subtle changes throughout the building, colors more vibrant, magical artifacts humming with renewed energy, the very air charged with protective intent. Nipsey met them at the top of the stairs, bouncing with excitement. "Young Master has awakened the old magics. Nipsey hasn't felt the manor so alive since Master Fleamont's time." "I need to check something in the library," Harry told the elf. "My mother's journal mentioned a hidden grimoire." "The Potter family grimoire." Nipsey nodded vigorously. "Most secret, most powerful Potter magic. This way, Master Harry." The manor's library rivaled small sections of Hogwarts, thousands of volumes collected over centuries, organized in moving shelves that rearranged themselves according to the reader's needs. At the center stood a reading table with the Potter crest inlaid in precious woods and metals. "The grimoire is hidden by blood magic," Nipsey explained, gesturing to a seemingly ordinary bookshelf. Master James showed Nipsey once. "Hand on the third shelf, say Audacia et Honorem, the Potter family motto." Harry placed his palm against the polished wood. "Audacia et Honorem." The shelf shimmered, then transformed entirely, revealing a hidden alcove containing a single massive book bound in red leather. Gold filigree formed the Potter crest on its cover, with smaller emblems of Gryffindor and Peveril worked into the design. "The complete family grimoire," Iron Fist whispered respectfully. "Few bloodlines maintain such unbroken magical records." Harry lifted the heavy tome, feeling a jolt of recognition as his magic connected with the family knowledge contained within. Opening to a random page, he found spells, rituals, and magical theory far beyond standard wizarding education, Potter family secrets passed down through generations. This is what my mother was studying, he realized, recognizing references from her journal. The protection ritual she used before they died. We should take it with us, Ragnarok advised. Along with any other critical family artifacts. While the manor is now secure, having key resources with you remains prudent. Harry nodded, reluctantly closing the grimoire. Nipsey, are there other important Potter heirlooms I should know about? Things my parents might have left here? The elf's ears perked up. Oh yes. Master James left a special trunk in the master suite before going into hiding. Said it contained contingency plans if something happened to him and Mistress Lily. Following the excited elf upstairs, Harry entered the master bedroom, a spacious chamber decorated in Gryffindor colors with a magnificent four-poster bed as its centerpiece. Nipsey scurried to a concealed panel in the wall, touching it with house elf magic to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside sat a trunk bearing both Potter and Evan's family crests intertwined. Unlike ordinary wizarding trunks, this one hummed with complex magic and bore no visible lock or keyhole. Bloodlocked, Ragnarok observed. Only you can open it. Harry pressed his palm against the trunk's surface. The wood warmed beneath his touch, and the lid clicked open to reveal multiple compartments organized with his father's characteristic precision. The first compartment contained documents, property deeds, investment portfolios, detailed accounts of Potter family holdings worldwide. The second held communication devices, two-way mirrors, enchanted journals, even a prototype long-distance communication orb developed by Fleamont Potter's research division. But the third compartment made Harry's breath catch. Personal letters from his parents, addressed to him at various future ages, for Harry, age 11, for Harry, first year at Hogwarts, for Harry, if we don't survive. Each sealed with both Potter and Evan's magical signatures, preserved perfectly by the trunk's enchantments. They left these for me, Harry whispered, throat tight with emotion. They expected Sirius to bring you here, Ragnarok said gently. To give you these at the appropriate times. Harry carefully set aside the letters, continuing his exploration. The fourth compartment contained defensive artifacts, shield amulets, protective talismans, even a battle robe sized for a young teenager with the Potter crest emblazoned on its chest. They were preparing for the worst, Harry noted, fingering the battle robe. Even while hoping for the best. The final compartment held a shallow stone basin carved with ancient runes, a pensieve, surrounded by dozens of crystal vials filled with swirling silver memories. Your parents' memories, Iron Fist explained. Preserved for you to experience directly. An extraordinary gift. Harry stared at the collection, overwhelmed by its significance. His parents' voices, faces, personalities, all preserved here, waiting for him. We're definitely taking this with us. With Nipsey's help, Harry identified several other items worth retrieving, his father's secondary wand, kept as a backup in his study, a set of enchanted daggers passed down through the Potter line, several rare books mentioned specifically in his mother's journals. As they prepared to depart, Harry took a final look around the entrance hall, committing every detail to memory. I'll be back soon, he promised Nipsey. Once Sirius is free, once things are more settled. Master Harry could stay now, the elf suggested hopefully. The manor is safe. The bad wizard cannot enter. Not yet, Harry said reluctantly. There are still things I need to do, people watching for me. But soon, Nipsey. I promise. The elf nodded sadly but respectfully. We will keep everything perfect for Master's return. With one last look at his ancestral home, Harry activated the return port key, the treasure trove of family artifacts shrunk and secured in his expanded trunk. As Potter Manor faded from view, he felt both loss and determination. Another piece of his heritage reclaimed, another step toward the life that should have been his all along. Amelia Bone's office reflected her personality, meticulously organized, no nonsense, with just enough personal touches to hint at the woman behind the formidable reputation. Family photographs shared space with commendations and awards from her distinguished career in magical law enforcement. Harry arrived precisely at 7 the next morning, Portkey depositing him directly before her desk. Ragnarok materialized beside him, the Goblin's presence a non-negotiable condition of the meeting. Heir Potter Black, Amelia greeted formally, rising from her seat. Director Ragnarok. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Harry nodded, taking the offered chair. Madam Bones. I appreciate your urgency regarding my godfather's situation. Urgency is the very least I can offer, she replied grimly. 7 years without a trial is not just a miscarriage of justice, it's a stain on the entire DMLE. I've spent the last 36 hours reviewing the original case files, and frankly, I'm appalled by what I found. Or rather, what I didn't find. No trial transcripts, Harry said. No witness testimony under veritaserum. No magical oath verification. Precisely. Amelia opened a folder on her desk. The sum total of evidence against Sirius Black consists of hysterical Muggle witness statements about an explosion, collected after memory charms had already been applied, and Bartemius Crouch's personal assertion of guilt. Not a single magical verification procedure was followed. And Dumbledore? Amelia's expression hardened. As Chief Warlock, he countersigned the imprisonment order. When I questioned him yesterday about the lack of trial, he cited extraordinary wartime measures and overwhelming circumstantial evidence. Yet he witnessed my parents' will, Harry pointed out. He knew Pettigrew was the secret keeper. Yes. The simple word carried the weight of profound disillusionment. I've known Albus Dumbledore for decades. Respected him. Followed his leadership. But this. She shook her head. Deliberate suppression of exonerating evidence is not something I can overlook, regardless of who committed it. Ragnarok leaned forward. Then you support Black's immediate release? I've already dispatched Aurors Shacklebolt and Moody to retrieve him from Azkaban, Amelia confirmed. They should arrive with him shortly before the 9 o'clock hearing. The question is what happens afterward. We've prepared a petition for immediate medical custody, Ragnarok said, producing a scroll. Gringotts healing facilities are better equipped than St. Mungo's for treating prolonged Dementor exposure. Furthermore, as Mr. Black was imprisoned without trial, he legally remains Harry's rightful guardian, making Goblin custody of both logical until his health stabilizes. Amelia studied the petition carefully. Legally sound, though unprecedented. However, Dumbledore will fight this. He's already filed countermotions arguing that Black may be magically unstable after Azkaban and should remain under Ministry supervision. Convenient, Harry remarked coldly. Keep Sirius controlled, keep me isolated. The same strategy he's used for 7 years. Amelia's shrewd eyes assessed him. You're remarkably composed for an 8-year-old facing these circumstances. I'm remarkably composed for someone who discovered 47 memory charms in his head, Harry countered. Age becomes somewhat irrelevant after that. A ghost of a smile touched Amelia's lips. Fair point. Now, regarding today's hearing, I'll preside as head of the DMLE. The evidence from your parents' will is compelling, but additional testimony would strengthen our position. Are you willing to provide memories of the will reading for pensive verification? Already prepared. Harry placed a crystal vial on her desk, containing the silvery strand of his memory from Gringotts. Certified and witnessed by Ragnarok himself. Excellent. Amelia pocketed the vial. One final matter, Dumbledore has requested a private meeting with you before the hearing. I denied his request, citing your status as a key witness, but you should be prepared for him to approach you directly. He's not accustomed to being refused. We're counting on it, Harry said, exchanging meaningful glances with Ragnarok. In fact, a confrontation might prove advantageous. Understanding dawned in Amelia's eyes. You want to force his hand. Make him reveal his true intentions in front of witnesses. Dumbledore operates from the shadows, Ragnarok explained. His power lies in manipulation behind closed doors. Public scrutiny is his greatest weakness. A chime sounded, indicating someone at the office door. Amelia waved her wand, revealing Kingsley Shacklebolt's tall form waiting outside. "They've arrived with Black," she informed them, rising. "We should proceed to the secure holding area. Are you prepared to see him, Heir Potter Black? His condition may be distressing." Harry stood, squaring his shoulders. "I've read his letters. All 84 of them. I know what to expect." But nothing could have truly prepared him for the reality. The secure room adjacent to the Wisengamot chambers was designed for witness protection, comfortably appointed with chairs, refreshments, and privacy wards. Yet the man huddled in the corner, thin blanket wrapped around skeletal shoulders, seemed utterly out of place in the civilized surroundings. Sirius Black barely resembled the handsome, laughing man from Harry's restored memories and the photographs in his parents' albums. His once thick black hair hung in matted tangles around a gaunt face. His skin stretched tight over prominent bones, sallow and gray from years without sunlight. But worst were his eyes, once bright with mischief according to every account of him, now haunted, sunken into dark hollows. Those eyes fixed on Harry the moment he entered, widening with disbelief. "Harry?" The voice was a rasp, damaged from years of screaming against Dementor's effects. "Is it really you?" Harry swallowed the lump in his throat, stepping closer. "It's me, Sirius. I got your letters. All of them." Sirius made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "They said, the Aurors said you were found. That you'd escaped Dumbledore's control. That you knew I was innocent." His skeletal hands trembled. "I thought I was hallucinating again." "You're not hallucinating," Harry said, moving to kneel beside his godfather's chair. "I know everything now. About you being my rightful guardian. About Pettigrew being the secret keeper. About Dumbledore keeping us apart." Tears carved paths through the grime on Sirius's face. "Harry." He reached out hesitantly, as if afraid his godson might vanish at his touch. Harry didn't hesitate. He leaned forward and wrapped his arms around the emaciated man, holding him as gently as he would something precious and fragile. "I'm getting you out of here today," he promised fiercely. "You're never going back to that place." Sirius broke down entirely, 7 years of pent-up emotion pouring out as he clutched Harry like a lifeline. Amelia and Kingsley tactfully moved to the far side of the room, giving them privacy while Ragnarok watched with uncharacteristic gentleness in his dark eyes. "You look so much like James," Sirius managed when he could finally speak again. "But you have, my mother's eyes," Harry finished with a small smile. "I've heard that in the memories I've recovered." Sirius pulled back slightly, studying Harry's face. "Recovered memories? Then it's true, what they're saying about Dumbledore." Harry nodded grimly. 47 memory charms. Magical bindings. Suppression of my heritage and abilities. The goblins have been helping me break through it all. Rage flickered in Sirius's hollow eyes. That manipulative old, he cut himself off, glancing at the ministry officials across the room. "I knew something was wrong when he blocked my every attempt to contact you. But this. Harry, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. Should have protected you." "You tried," Harry said firmly. "I know that now. But we're going to fix everything, starting today." A soft knock interrupted them. Kingsley opened the door to admit a ministry healer who administered a calming draught and nutrient potion to Sirius, explaining they were necessary to help him withstand the stress of the hearing. "The session begins in 20 minutes, Amelia informed them. "Heir Potter Black, we've arranged for you to enter through a private access point to avoid the press gathered in the atrium." "And after the hearing?" Harry asked. "Assuming the release is granted?" "I've reviewed your petition for medical custody," Amelia said. "If Black is officially exonerated, I see no legal barrier to approving immediate transfer to Gringotts healing facilities." Sirius looked confused. Gringotts? Not St. Mungo's. The goblins have better treatments for dementor exposure, Harry explained. And more importantly, Dumbledore can't reach you there. Understanding dawned in Sirius's eyes. You really have been busy, haven't you? I had 7 years to make up for, Harry replied with a smile that briefly made him look his actual age. As the time for the hearing approached, ministry officials arrived to escort them to the Wizengamot chamber. Harry squeezed Sirius's hand reassuringly before being led to a separate entrance designated for witnesses. The Wizengamot chamber hummed with tense energy, every seat filled as news of the emergency session had drawn a full attendance. Harry, entering through a side door with Ragnarok, immediately spotted Dumbledore in his chief warlock seat, looking uncharacteristically tense despite his attempt at a serene expression. Amelia Bones stood at the prosecutor's podium, projecting calm authority. This emergency session of the Wizengamot is called to address a grave miscarriage of justice brought to light through recently discovered evidence. The case of Sirius Black versus Magical Britain will now commence. A murmur ran through the assembled witches and wizards as Sirius was led in, still shackled despite his obvious physical weakness. The contrast between his haggard appearance and the formal grandeur of the chamber made the injustice of his situation all the more stark. 7 years ago, Amelia continued, in the aftermath of the defeat of He Who Must Not Be Named, Sirius Black was remanded to Azkaban without trial for the betrayal of James and Lily Potter and the murder of Peter Pettigrew along with 12 Muggles. This decision was made under emergency wartime provisions by then-Director Bartemius Crouch, with approval from Chief Warlock Albus Dumbledore. She paused, surveying the chamber. New evidence has emerged demonstrating that not only was this procedural failure unjust, but that exonerating evidence existed at the time of Mr. Black's imprisonment, evidence deliberately suppressed. Dumbledore rose from his seat, face carefully composed. Madam Bones, while I appreciate the DMLE's diligence, characterizing wartime security measures as deliberate suppression seems unnecessarily inflammatory. I disagree, Chief Warlock, Amelia replied coldly. Particularly when the suppressed evidence was a will you personally witnessed. Before Dumbledore could respond, she gestured to an aide who wheeled forward a pensive projector, a modified version of the memory viewing device that could display images above the basin for the entire chamber to see. I present as evidence the will of James and Lily Potter, witnessed by Albus Dumbledore and Minerva McGonagall on October 28, 1981. The silvery memory rose from the pensive, expanding to show the document Harry had first seen in Ragnarok's office. The chamber fell silent as the critical passage was magnified, to Peter Pettigrew, if you have remained faithful to the Fidelius charm as our secret keeper, we leave 50,000 galleons and our eternal gratitude. If you have betrayed us, may magic judge you accordingly. Gasps and mutters erupted throughout the chamber. Dumbledore's expression remained neutral, but Harry, watching closely from his witness seat, noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. This will, Amelia continued when the noise subsided, explicitly identifies Peter Pettigrew as the Potter's secret keeper, not Sirius Black. It was properly filed with Gringotts but magically sealed on November 2, 1981, by order of the Chief Warlock, allegedly to protect sensitive information about the Potter heir. All eyes turned to Dumbledore, who rose again, his voice reasonable and measured. The will's sealing was indeed my decision, made to protect young Harry from those who might exploit his inheritance during his vulnerable childhood. However, I admit that overlooking the secret keeper information was a grave oversight during those chaotic days. An oversight? Sirius spoke for the first time, his damaged voice carrying surprising strength. You visited me in my cell that first week, Albus. I begged you to listen about Peter. You said you'd look into it and never returned. Tension crackled through the chamber. Dumbledore's grandfatherly facade slipped momentarily before he recovered. My memory of that conversation differs, Sirius. You were understandably distraught, we need not rely on conflicting recollections, Amelia interrupted. We have 2 additional pieces of evidence. First, the sworn testimony of heir Potterblack regarding the will's contents. Harry stood as prompted, facing the assembled Wisengamot with calm dignity that belied his years. I confirm that the will shown is authentic, discovered during my medical treatment at Gringotts following the identification of 47 unauthorized memory charms placed upon me. The will clearly states that Peter Pettigrew was secret keeper and betrayed my parents. A wave of shocked whispers swept the chamber. Harry continued, voice steady. Furthermore, restored memories show Albus Dumbledore personally directing me to the Dursley household against my parents' explicit instructions and subsequently monitoring my placement there despite documented abuse. Heir Potter Black, Dumbledore interjected, voice gentle but eyes sharp. You've been through a traumatic experience with the memory charm removals. Memories can become confused or conflated during such procedures. Are you questioning the expertise of Gringotts healers, Chief Warlock? Ragnarok's gravelly voice cut through Dumbledore's attempt to discredit Harry. Every memory charm was documented, its magical signature verified. Each removal was witnessed and certified. Of course not, Dumbledore backpedaled smoothly. I merely suggest that young Harry's interpretation of events may be colored by the understandable shock of his situation. Then perhaps our final evidence will prove more persuasive, Amelia said. Aurors, bring in the witness. The chamber doors opened to admit Kingsley Shacklebolt, levitating a sealed glass container. Inside, a rat with one missing toe thrashed frantically against its prison. Peter Pettigrew, Amelia announced to gasps from the assembly, captured this morning at the Weasley household where he has been hiding for years in his unregistered animagus form. Auror Shacklebolt, please proceed. Kingsley placed the container on a special platform designed to force an animagus transformation. With a flash of blue light, the rat elongated, twisted, and transformed into a balding, twitchy man who immediately cowered against the magical restraints that formed around him. I've been framed. Pettigrew squeaked, eyes darting frantically around the chamber. Sirius was the secret keeper. Everyone knew that. Then you won't object to Veritasrum testimony, Amelia said coolly, motioning for a ministry potioneer to step forward. What followed was the systematic demolition of the case against Sirius Black. Under truth serum, Pettigrew confessed to being the secret keeper, to betraying the Potter's location to Voldemort, to framing Sirius by shouting accusations in the street before blowing it up himself, to hiding with the Weasley family as their pet for 7 years. By the time the questioning concluded, the mood in the chamber had shifted dramatically. Where there had been skepticism about reopening the case, there was now outrage that an innocent man had suffered for years while the true criminal lived in comfort. In light of this incontrovertible evidence, Amelia declared, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement moves for the immediate exoneration of Sirius Black on all charges, the restoration of his civil rights and properties, and compensation for wrongful imprisonment as prescribed by law. Seconded, called Augusta Longbottom from her seat among the ancient houses. The motion requires a vote, Dumbledore said, visibly struggling to maintain control of the proceedings. Those in favor, the forest of raised hands made counting unnecessary. Only a handful of the most conservative members abstained, none opposed outright. Motion carried, Dumbledore conceded. Sirius Black is hereby cleared of all charges. The shackles, please, Auror Shacklebolt. As Kingsley removed the restraints from Sirius's wrists, Harry couldn't contain himself any longer. He rushed forward, embracing his godfather again as the chamber erupted in applause. Photographers from the Daily Prophet captured the moment, the boy who lived reunited with his wrongfully imprisoned godfather, both of them survivors of a system that had failed them. There remains the matter of Heir Potter Black's guardianship and Mr. Black's medical care, Ragnarok announced, stepping forward with the prepared petition. Given Mr. Black's legal status as godfather and the medical needs resulting from his wrongful imprisonment, we propose immediate transfer of both to Gringotts healing facilities. Dumbledore rose quickly. While I congratulate Sirius on his exoneration, surely St. Mungo's would be more appropriate for his recovery. As for young Harry, given the confusion surrounding his guardianship, perhaps a neutral third party should assume temporary custody until matters are settled. A neutral third party like yourself, Chief Warlock? Augusta Longbottom asked pointedly. Dumbledore spread his hands. I merely suggest what seems most prudent for the boy's safety. My safety was obviously not your priority when you placed me with abusive muggles against my parents' explicit instructions, Harry said clearly, his young voice carrying through the suddenly silent chamber. Nor when you placed 47 memory charms on me to hide my heritage and abilities. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly, the grandfatherly mask slipping again. Harry, my boy, those measures, while perhaps excessive in retrospect, were taken to protect you from those who would exploit your fame and status. Like yourself? Harry challenged, magic crackling visibly beneath his skin as his control wavered with emotion. Was it protection when you bound my magic to less than 20% of its capacity? When you erased every memory of accidental magic that might have given me some understanding of my abilities? When you intercepted 7 years of letters from my godfather? The gallery erupted in shocked exclamations. Dumbledore's expression hardened momentarily before he forced it back to benign concern. These are complex matters that should be discussed privately, not aired before the Wizengamot. I disagree, Amelia interjected. These allegations constitute serious magical crimes if proven. The DMLE will be opening a formal investigation into all memory charms and magical bindings placed on Heir Potterblack without proper guardian consent. Sensing the tide turning decisively against him, Dumbledore changed tactics. Of course the DMLE must investigate any concerns. In the meantime, however, Harry's immediate placement remains the pressing issue. Perhaps, there is no issue to resolve, Ragnarok interrupted firmly. Under the Treaty of 1612, Clause 27, Gringotts has claimed temporary wardship of Heir Potterblack while investigating financial malfeasance against his accounts. This claim has been properly filed and magically registered. Furthermore, Amelia added, with Mr. Black's exoneration, he legally resumes his status as Harry's godfather and designated guardian per the Potter's will. His medical needs can be addressed simultaneously with his ward's magical recovery at Gringotts, as proposed. Dumbledore looked around the chamber, finding little support even among his usual allies. The evidence presented, combined with Harry's composed testimony and Pettigrew's confession, had shifted opinion dramatically. Very well, he conceded with apparent grace. However, as Chief Warlock, I must insist on regular updates regarding Harry's well-being and magical treatment. Your concern is noted, Ragnarok said coldly. However, as you are potentially implicated in the ongoing investigation, direct access to Heir Potterblack would constitute a conflict of interest. Before Dumbledore could respond, Sirius straightened to his full height, drawing on some inner reserve of strength. As Harry's godfather and legal guardian, I formally deny Albus Dumbledore any access to my godson until the investigation into his actions is complete. The magical weight of the declaration resonated through the chamber, a godparent's protection, one of the oldest magical bonds recognized in wizarding law. For the first time, Dumbledore appeared genuinely startled, as if he hadn't anticipated such a direct challenge to his authority. The gallery watched with fascination as the two wizards locked eyes, Dumbledore at the height of his power and influence, Sirius weakened by years of imprisonment but fueled by righteous anger and protective instinct. So be it, Dumbledore finally said, his voice neutral but his eyes cold. The Wizengamot recognizes Sirius Black's guardianship of Harry Potter, with medical custody granted to Gringotts until Mr. Black's recovery is complete. This session is adjourned. As the chamber began to empty, Harry felt a mixture of triumph and unease. They had won this round, Sirius was free, their custody arrangement approved, Dumbledore publicly challenged. But the old wizard's expression as he swept from the chamber suggested this was merely the opening move in a longer game. We should leave quickly, Ragnarok murmured. Dumbledore will attempt to corner you privately if given the opportunity. Sure enough, as they made their way toward the exit, Dumbledore appeared in their path, moving with surprising speed for his apparent age. Harry, a moment please, he requested, blue eyes twinkling with grandfatherly concern. There are matters regarding your parents we should discuss, any such discussions can wait until my godfather has recovered, Harry replied firmly, positioning himself slightly between Dumbledore and the still unsteady Sirius. And should include my legal representatives. I'm afraid certain matters cannot wait, Dumbledore persisted, lowering his voice. The protections I placed were unauthorized and harmful, Harry interrupted. Just like the memory charms you placed without my guardian's consent. Several nearby Wisengamot members slowed their departure, openly eavesdropping on the confrontation. Dumbledore noticed their attention and adjusted his approach. I understand you're angry, my boy. Memory charm removal is disorienting, and you've learned many things very quickly. But there are dangers you don't yet comprehend, like the soul fragment you left in my scar for 7 years. Harry asked bluntly. Dumbledore went perfectly still. What did you say? The Horcrux, Harry clarified, voice pitched just loud enough for nearby listeners to hear. Voldemort's soul fragment that lodged in my scar when the killing curse rebounded. The one you knew about but left there while you watched me suffer with the Dursleys. Gasps came from those close enough to hear. Dumbledore's facade cracked completely for an instant, genuine alarm replacing the manufactured concern in his eyes. Harry, that information is extremely sensitive, it's also no longer relevant, Harry cut him off. The Horcrux has been contained and removed by Gringotts healers. I no longer carry any piece of Voldemort within me. Dumbledore paled visibly. That's not possible. The Prophet, he caught himself, glancing at the growing audience. We really must discuss this privately. No, we must not, Sirius interjected, placing a protective hand on Harry's shoulder despite his weakness. Any information about my godson's condition should be shared with me as his guardian, not whispered in corners by the man who left me to rot in Azkaban while he manipulated Harry's life. Sensing a losing battle, especially with witnesses recording every word, Dumbledore retreated. Perhaps when emotions have cooled, we can revisit these matters more productively. For now, I wish you a speedy recovery, Sirius. As Dumbledore departed, Ragnarok signaled to a goblin security team waiting near the chamber exit. Our portkey is ready. We should leave before anyone else attempts to delay us. Minutes later, they materialized in a private reception area deep within Gringotts. Healers immediately surrounded Sirius, easing him onto a floating stretcher while administering potions to counteract the journey's strain on his weakened body. I'm staying with him, Harry insisted as they prepared to move Sirius to the healing chambers. Of course, Blood Fong agreed, appearing at Harry's side. The emotional connection will aid his recovery. However, you must prepare yourself. Treating severe Dementor exposure is neither quick nor pleasant. As they proceeded through Gringotts medical facilities, Sirius reached out from the stretcher, grasping Harry's hand. We did it, he whispered hoarsely. We actually did it. This is just the beginning, Harry promised. Once you're stronger, we have plans to make. Potter Manor is waiting for us. My parents left letters, memories in a pensieve. And Dumbledore? Sirius asked, eyes already growing heavy from the healing potions. Harry's expression hardened. He'll face consequences for what he's done. But more importantly, we'll undo his manipulations. Whatever game he's been playing with our lives stops now. As Sirius drifted into a healing sleep, Harry settled into a chair beside his bed, finally allowing himself to feel the full weight of the day's events. His godfather was free. Dumbledore had been publicly challenged. The path forward was opening up, complicated but full of possibilities that had been denied to him for years. Yet one question nagged at him, Dumbledore's reaction to learning the Horcrux had been removed. Not relief that Harry was free from Voldemort's soul fragment, but alarm. Why? The answer came that night, as Harry slept beside Sirius's healing bed. The final memory charm, the one the goblins had identified as different from the others, began to unravel naturally as Harry's mind processed the day's confrontation with Dumbledore. In his dreams, the complete prophecy his mother had discovered in the Potter Grimoire replayed, but now with additional context: the heir of two houses must unite the old magic or all shall fall to darkness. Images followed, his mother's research into the Potter and Evans bloodlines, her discovery that the Evans line descended not from Muggles as everyone believed, but from a squib branch of another ancient family thought extinct. A family whose symbol was a serpent. Harry woke with a gasp, the final memory charm completely shattered. Knowledge flooded his consciousness, not just memories this time, but understanding of why Dumbledore had gone to such extraordinary lengths to control him. Slytherin, he whispered into the dark and healing chamber. My mother was descended from Slytherin's squib line. The heir of two houses, Gryffindor through his father, Slytherin through his mother. The potential to unite magic from the two supposedly opposed founders. Power that Dumbledore couldn't control, couldn't predict, couldn't manipulate to fit his narrative of a prophesied savior. Harry glanced at his sleeping godfather, then at the monitoring crystals showing Sirius's gradual healing. They had time now. Time to recover, to plan, to prepare for whatever came next. The golden glow beneath Harry's skin pulsed with new understanding, threads of emerald green now intertwining with the gold and crimson. Not just Potterblack Peveril Gryffindor, but Slytherin too. A magical heritage unprecedented in wizarding history. No wonder Dumbledore had been so desperate to keep him ignorant, controlled, and dependent. No wonder he'd risked so much to maintain his influence over Harry's life. But that control was broken now, those illusions shattered. Harry's true identity, with all its complex implications, was finally his to explore, to understand, to wield as he saw fit. And with Sirius beside him, with the Goblins' alliance, with his parents' legacy to guide him, Harry Potter, no, Hadrian James Potterblack Peveril Gryffindor Slytherin, would forge his own destiny. One free from Dumbledore's manipulations. One worthy of the sacrifices his parents had made. One that united rather than divided the magical world they died to protect. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Dumbledore would regroup, adapt his strategies, continue his efforts to regain control. Voldemort, still tethered to life through his remaining Horcruxes, remained a threat. But for the first time since that fateful Halloween night, Harry faced these challenges not as a pawn in someone else's game, but as a player with agency, knowledge, and power of his own. As dawn broke over Gringotts, Harry smiled, not the smile of an 8-year-old boy, but of an heir coming into his inheritance, a godson reunited with his rightful guardian, a child reclaiming the legacy his parents had always intended for him. The game had changed irrevocably. The chessboard was redrawn. And Harry, at last, was moving his own pieces. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.